Chapter 444. Chu Yang's pupils contracted. At this moment, his extraordinary spiritual sense came into play. He could clearly feel that there was a strange aura pouring into every pore of his body. Meng Luo's every step, every movement, every wave of his folding fan, every gentle smile in his eyes, and the indifferent and genial expression on his face gave people a beautiful and hazy feeling as if they were in a spring dream. Meng Luo's silhouettes had turned into 14. They were walking towards Chu Yang in a semicircle. Everyone seemed to be able to smell the fragrance of the grass in spring. They felt that this world was filled with vitality. Many people had already laid down on the ground that was filled with strange rocks. However, a satisfied and warm smile appeared on their faces. It was as if they were lying on a soft grass that was filled with vitality. This is the kind of spring that I've experienced before. There were several first-grade king-level experts among these people. However, Chu Yang's heart was filled with anger. A burst of resentment. Others didn't know, but he was very clear about it. Meng Luo's husband relied on the plucking yin to supplement yang technique. He plucked the vital yin of countless young girls under the age of 15 to supplement their vital yin. And he used the hearts of these young girls who had just understood the matters of love. Furthermore, it also carried the beautiful yearning and longing of these young girls towards their marriage. That was the purest dream of a young girl's heart. All of this was to destroy the dreams of these young girls mercilessly in an extremely agreeable way. Using mercilessness as a cauldron to refine the pure and beautiful feelings between heaven and earth. This was the riotous spring dream. In a spring dream, flowers would fall in profusion. A spring dream would leave no trace, and countless beauties would fall in the world. The profusion of falling flowers was the price of a spring dream. This was the origin of the name riotous spring dream god. This was an extremely cruel and inhumane act. Meng Luo has already practiced to this extent. His influence was so great that it was beyond Chu Yang's expectations. It was obvious that at least a few hundred girls had been destroyed by his hands. The killing intent in Chu Yang's heart suddenly rose. In this dreamland that was like a spring dream, this kind of intense killing intent seemed to want to break through the shroud of the spring dream. He wanted to kill this scum. However, he thought about it again. I have just arrived in the third heaven. So, my foundation isn't stable yet. Moreover, the Meng clan is a top-notch clan. So, I might be able to vent my anger for a while if I kill Meng Luo now. But it would be extremely disadvantageous for me in the long run. Keeping a demon like Meng Luo alive was the most effective weapon against the Meng clan. Chu Yang didn't know that his beloved Mo Qingwu had been proposed to by Meng Luo at this moment. He wouldn't have cared about the Tribulation Sword Master's bullshit plan if he had known about it. In fact, he would have killed this bastard with his sword. But at this moment he didn't know. Meng Luo felt Chu Yang's murderous intention. His body shook, and he fiercely urged the spring dream. The smile on his face became even more intoxicating. And his figure became even more confident and at ease. It seemed as if an elegant young man was walking in the spring breeze. A woman would have fallen deeply in love with Meng Luo if she were to see him at this moment. This young man in his dreams has almost touched the beauty of the entire world. But who would have known that in this dreamlike scene, this gentle and refined young man was a hungry wolf that ate people without spitting out their bones? Meng Luo's silhouettes had already expanded to 27. The spring dream aura in the air had become even richer. He had almost arrived in front of Chu Yang. But Chu Yang still hadn't moved. Meng Luo's eyes had already revealed a complacent look. His murderous intention was hidden. Dong Wuxiang's heart was burning with anxiety as he watched this. He was about to say something to remind Chu Yang. Chu Yang shouted loudly, "Wuxiang, look carefully." Then he suddenly backhanded his sword and stabbed his left arm. Blood spurted out with a sound. Chu Yang circulated his sword, and the blood scattered into a blood fog that filled the sky. Meng Luo's complexion changed in an instant. Then Chu Yang attacked with his sword. The sword light flashed and stabbed Meng Luo's wrist. The folding fan fell to the ground with a bang sound. Then, the sword stabbed Meng Luo's legs. Meng Luo screamed loudly and knelt down with a plop sound in front of Chu Yang. This dreamlike scene disappeared in an instant. Everyone came back to their senses at this moment. And they saw that one of the 8 great dukes, Meng Luo, was kneeling in front of Chu Yang in a distressed state. He didn't need to kneel even if he was defeated, right? What's wrong with this great Duke Meng Luo? Is he begging for mercy from the opponent? Apart from a few king-level experts with exquisite cultivation, the others couldn't clearly see what had happened. Chu Yang exclaimed and said, "Great Duke Meng, what are you doing? We were just exchanging pointers. So, how can I kill you? What are you doing? Quickly get up, quickly get up. Why are you kneeling like this? Quickly get up. I won't kill you. I won't kill you." These few words were extremely loud and clear. Apart from a few people who had seen the truth, everyone else exposed a look of disdain on their faces. Meng Luo, you're the successor of a top-notch clan. You're one of the 8 great dukes of the 3 heavens. You're still a king-level expert even if you don't take into account these glorious identities. How can you kneel down and beg for mercy from the enemy without any integrity? You've lost your face. Extremely disdainful. Dong Wuxiang opened his mouth wide. He had never imagined that this matter would develop in such a dramatic manner. Meng Luo had the upper hand a moment ago. And Chu Yang hadn't moved at all, as if he was an idiot. But Chu Yang's sword had displayed its might the next moment. Moreover, those sword strikes hadn't been very fierce. So, Dong Wuxiang had believed that Meng Luo could have dodged them as long as he knew how to fight. However, Meng Luo had strangely knelt down in front of Chu Yang's sword. Such an earth-shaking change had made Dong Wuxiang feel as if he was still in a spring dream. He couldn't believe it, and rubbed his eyes. The 10 king-level experts of the Meng clan blushed with shame. Meng Luo was facing them, and Chu Yang's back was facing them. His black robe was fluttering in the wind, and had covered his line of sight. They had only seen the flash of a sword light. Then Meng Luo had fiercely knelt down. He had knelt down in front of this black-clothed youth. What's going on? How can the young lord kneel down in front of the enemy and beg for mercy in front of so many people? Chu Yang enthusiastically helped Meng Luo up. Meng Luo looked at him with empty eyes. But it seemed as if he was looking into the void. He seemed to be at a loss. Then he suddenly spoke in a dream-like manner. "How did you know?" Chu Yang coldly looked at him. He didn't answer his question. Instead he said, "You've lost." "Lost? I've lost." Meng Luo muttered. Then he suddenly issued a long and loud shout. He turned around and walked away. He walked a few steps, and then turned around again. "Say your name. I'll look for you again." "The person who defeated you a moment ago is called Chu Yang." Chu Yang raised his face and looked at him disdainfully. "The person you've just knelt to is also called Chu Yang." Meng Luo screamed loudly. He opened his mouth and spouted a mouthful of blood. His body flashed and he jumped into his own team. Then, a frightened cry was heard the next moment, and a small figure was thrown out by Meng Luo. Chu Yang caught it and saw a pair of frightened black and white eyes looking at him. It was the storm leopard's cub. Meng Luo hadn't gone back on his word. He also hadn't dared to go back on his word. "Let's go," Meng Luo ordered. He then took the lead to leave with his tail between his legs. The 10 king-level experts of the Meng clan looked at Chu Yang's face. It seemed as if they wanted to firmly remember this person's face. Then, they followed after him without saying anything. Not only the Meng clan, but all the experts in the vicinity also looked at Chu Yang at this moment. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Since when did such a world-shaking young expert appear in these 3 days? "Duke Chu, this old man has a presumptuous request. Would it be possible for you to clear up this old man's confusion?" The one who had spoken was a blue-clothed old man. He was a middle-grade king-level expert. However, he had also fallen into Meng Luo's trap. Fortunately, he was a distance away and didn't indulge in it too much, so he didn't make a fool of himself. Chu Yang replied, "Senior has given me an order. I won't dare to be unwise." That blue-clothed old man smiled happily. He was very satisfied and proud of Chu Yang's friendly attitude. A sense of appreciation arose in his heart. He stroked his beard and said, "Grand Master Chu, the god that Meng Luogong used a moment ago was very powerful. Meng Luogong seems to be only a second-grade king-level expert at present. But this old man can't contend with that kind of power. He had only asked what kind of husband he was. He hadn't asked how to break it. He was obviously afraid of offending the Meng clan. Chu Yang had been waiting for someone to ask him this question. He would have explained even if no one had asked. How could he let go of a pillow when he was about to doze off? Senior, I will explain it to everyone since you have asked. So, I won't confuse you in the future. Chu Yang smiled in a very harmless manner. He looked very open and magnanimous. Luo Kadi and GMO trembled from head to toe. Someone is bound to get unlucky every time Chu Yang shows such an innocent smile. It seems that the Meng clan is out of luck this time. This kind of husband is called the Vivid Spring Dream God. It's extremely powerful. Chu Yang lowered his voice and spoke in a mysterious manner. However, everyone's curiosity had been aroused by him. So, everyone pricked up their ears to listen. They could have heard him clearly even if he had lowered his voice. This kind of god is extremely evil. Let alone a king-level expert, even an emperor-level expert won't be able to escape death if he doesn't know about it in advance. Chu Yang said in a serious manner, "That's because one needs to pluck the vital yin of at least several thousand young girls under the age of 15 to practice this evil art. And they need to cooperate with each other in order to practice it, ah?" Everyone hadn't expected that they would hear such a sensational thing. Not only that, but the consciousness of the young girls who have been plucked must be destroyed. Then, they must become a walking corpse's plaything. And, they must be plucked to replenish their young. Chu Yang slowly explained. He had deliberately left everyone some time to digest this information. The Meng clan has such an evil husband? Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They angrily shouted. Plucking yin to replenish yang is already evil enough. But Meng Luo has taken it a step further. And he's specifically plucking young girls? This is a heinous crime. It has reached the point of insanity. The vital yin of these innocent young girls must be plucked out together with their most beautiful fantasies. Then they must be refined with an evil method. Then they will become a unique god. Then they will use this method to make the enemy fall into a beautiful spring-like illusion. Then they will be slaughtered. Chu Yang slowly explained. Chapter 445. This is absolutely true. You can use any method to verify it. Or, you can check the records of ancient books. Chu Yang insipidly said, "This matter has nothing to do with me because I can break it. Therefore, it doesn't matter to me whether I say it or not." But, everyone's An impatient person asked, "How did you break it?" Chu Yang looked at that person with interest and said, "This matter is related to my unique mental cultivation method." That person suddenly became embarrassed. In any case, I still have to thank little brother for exposing this shocking secret. Moreover, you have exposed the true face of the Meng clan. This matter is no trivial matter. We must immediately return and report it to our clans. The blue-clothed old man solemnly bowed and left. Everyone also cupped their fists and bid farewell with heavy expressions on their faces. Meng Luo is out of luck this time. Luo Kadi laughed. He then said in a gloating manner, "Motherfucker, this bastard is constantly proposing marriage to every small clan. He wants to marry young girls who are less than 15 years old as concubines. Many clans want to curry favor with the Meng clan. So, they want to marry their daughters to him. There should be more than 30 daughters from small clans. That's why the Meng clan's strength is so huge. But I guess these clans will be the first to deal with Meng Luo once this matter is exposed. Haha, this is very satisfying." Yes, these clans don't take their daughters seriously. But, the Meng clan will suffer the joint suppression of these big clans once this matter spreads out. After all, the existence of this evil technique is very dangerous for the top experts of these big clans. These clans will draw a clear line between themselves and the Meng clan even if they don't want to vent their anger for their daughters. So, they won't be implicated and suffer a calamity. Therefore, using their daughters as an excuse is the most legitimate reason. GMO also came from a big clan. So, how could he not understand this? However, Dong Wuxiang was pondering about another matter. He looked at everyone and asked, "Big brother, I don't understand." Chu Yang smiled, "I understand what you don't understand." GMO and Luo Kadi fainted at the same time. This sentence was very awkward to say. You must be wondering why Meng Luo was so aggressive, and why his vivid spring dream divine technique was so powerful. But it was still easily defeated by me, right? Chu Yang smiled and said, "In fact, when I was thrusting my sword a few times, I deliberately slowed down my speed so that you could understand." "Yes, this is what I don't understand," Dong Wuxiang said. "Meng Luo shouldn't have been defeated so quickly in any case." There are two important reasons for this. Chu Yang stretched out two fingers. First, the vivid spring dream divine technique. As the name implies, Meng Luo used his evil technique to create an infinitely relaxed and pleasant mental state. But this kind of relaxed happiness had a fatal flaw, and that was blood. Bloody. Dong Wuxiang muttered to himself as if he had comprehended something. But blood alone is not enough. It has to be that kind of blood mist. Chu Yang said, "Moreover, if you want to defeat the enemy, you must use the vivid spring dream divine technique to a certain extent before you can use the blood fog to break it." "I understand," Dong Wuxiang nodded. GMO and Luo Kadi also nodded in succession. The second point is the timing. Meng Luo's strength wouldn't have been damaged if he had used the blood fog to break the vivid spring dream divine technique just as he had launched it. So, he could still use other martial arts to fight you. Chu Yang insipidly said, "But he wouldn't have much of his spirit left by the time he had created more than 20 phantoms. And the spiritual power of his entire body would have been almost exhausted. Therefore, you could have killed him in one fell swoop if you had attacked him at that time." Chu Yang softly said. "So, that's how it is. It seems that this evil technique is nothing more than this." Luo Kadi casually said, "I will cut this bastard into pieces the next time I meet him." "What do you know?" Chu Yang glared at him. "You understand? But, can you resist until then? Even an alert king-level expert can't resist that kind of powerful spiritual influence. What will you use to resist it?" Dong Wuxiang's expression shook as he said, "Yes, this is the problem. This problem is the key." Chu Yang said, "My martial technique is special. So, I can't be influenced by it. But, it's different for you. So, you must pay a price, such as pain." "Pain?" "Yes." Chu Yang said, "You must hide a needle or a sharp object in your palm in advance when Meng Luo launches the vivid spring dream divine technique. You must silently stab yourself once you feel the desire of lust. You must stab yourself." Chu Yang solemnly said, "Remember, you must stab yourself. This is very important. You must be aware of the pain because your blood is flowing. You must be stimulated by the pain to stay awake. Then, you must drag it out to a certain extent. Then, you can defeat the enemy in one fell swoop. If by any chance he was charmed, he would be dead for sure. You must remember this." Luo Kadi and the other two nodded solemnly. Suddenly, one of them asked in bewilderment, "What did you call me for?" The four people raised their heads in amazement. They saw that Jianghu had been leaning against a stone in a daze. He opened his sleepy eyes, looked at Chu Yang and said with dissatisfaction, "It's fine if you call me. But, you want me to kill thousands of babies? What's so important? It's very immoral to disturb people's dreams. Do you know that?" Chu Yang was flabbergasted. Then, the four people remembered Chu Yang's last words at the same time. "Remember. You must remember to defy the heavens." Luo Kadi lay on the ground with a puff sound and laughed wildly. Ji Mo's whole body twitched. He laughed so hard that his whole body trembled. But, his face was full of black lines. He felt humiliated, depressed, and amused as he looked at his elder brother. He wished he could go up and beat him up. Dong Wuxiang rarely laughed out loud. Chu Yang's face was tangled. I say, the names that you two brothers have chosen are too unique, right? You can even do this. I'm convinced. Jianghu said as if it was a matter of course, you have to ask my father about this. But the names that lazy guy came up with are too imprecise. Everyone laughed. Such a person is rare. Chu Yang nodded. He understood in his heart, no wonder these two brothers are so lazy. So that's why. There's another decisive factor behind this. The little storm leopard had been hiding in Chu Yang's sleeve ever since Meng Luo had thrown it over. Its small body was trembling. It would occasionally stretch out its head to look at Chu Yang in fear. It would softly whimper, and its black and white eyes would carry a delicate and pitiful look of resentment. This person is even more ferocious than the previous one. Whimper, don't you want this? Chu Yang handed over the storm leopard to Luo Kedi. Luo Kedi beamed with delight as he received it. He held the leopard and combed its fur as if it was his life. Then, he said with a kind face, "Good boy, be obedient. I'll give you meat to eat in a while." The little leopard looked at him, and stuck out its tongue to lick his hand. Luo Kedi was very happy. He held the little leopard in his bosom. But then he suddenly screamed in fear. His complexion turned deathly pale. Everyone looked over, and saw that the little leopard had opened its mouth, and was sucking on a small spot on Luo Kedi's chest. Second young Master Luo was caught off guard, and got sucked on his vital point. His whole body went limp and numb. He was startled. He felt as if his scalp had exploded. Second young Master Luo is breastfeeding. GMO screamed. Everyone immediately spat out rice. Fuck! You have such ability. You have such ability. Luo Kedi's face turned red. He wanted to take the little leopard's mouth away. But the little leopard was sucking hard, and wouldn't let go. It was whining pitifully. Second young Master Luo was at a loss. Dong Wuxiang brought some food, soaked it in water, and made it into porridge for the little leopard to eat. This temporarily prevented second young Master Luo's embarrassment. Everyone laughed heartily. Only Luo Kedi was frowning. He scratched his head and looked at the little leopard. He didn't know what to do. He thought that he had snatched a treasure. But he didn't expect that he had snatched a big trouble. The little leopard wants to drink milk. But where do I have that thing? What should I do now? Luo Kedi wanted to return the little leopard to Chu Yang. But Chu Yang firmly refused. Are you kidding me? Why would I take this little guy with me? Be a nanny? Chu Yang would definitely sell it if it was in Chu Yang's hands. Everyone thinks that a 7th grade spirit beast cub is rare. But Chu Yang didn't put it in his eyes. He was thinking in his heart, if I can get a 7th grade spirit beast or a higher grade spirit beast. Everyone joined forces and went up the mountain together. They saw that there was an uproar along the way. Everyone was whispering to each other about something. Hey, have you heard? That Meng Luo is a big pervert. He has raped 5,888 girls so far. A man was beaming with joy. Everyone was dumbfounded as soon as they heard this. Luo Kedi spurted out a mouthful of water. He was feeding the little leopard. But the little leopard got sprayed all over. The little leopard looked at him resentfully. Yes, yes. I heard that Meng Luo likes to eat young girls' hearts the most. Moreover, he wants to eat the world-defying stage heavens raw. Another man added oil and sauce. He's a real beast. I heard that the Meng clan practices this kind of martial art. It's very cruel. Moreover, each of them is good at plucking yin to supplement yang. A man said mysteriously. Another man looked pensive. No wonder. The Meng clan goes to the brothel in a grandiose manner every time. I saw it the last time. Really? That's awesome. TSK go together? Don't tell me that they have to compete in endurance in addition to practicing martial arts? Maybe they are shouting for everyone to move together. Haha. A man laughed obscenely. This is nothing. Last time, Meng Luo Gong snatched a girl from a brothel. He had an argument with someone, and almost came to blows. He only knew that it was his father when he met him. So, that's how it is. It's because he is plucking yin to supplement yang. A man said in a serious manner. Is there such a thing? Who won in the end? Did old Meng win or his son win? A gossiper's eyes lit up. Maybe old Meng and his son won together. Another gossiper followed. Chapter 446. Chu Yang and the others laughed so much that their stomachs hurt. However, everyone clearly knew one thing. The Meng clan was done for. Even if they didn't die, their vitality would be greatly damaged. And the origin of all this was because of the few words Chu Yang had said. GMO and the others naturally prostrated themselves in admiration. However, Dong Wulei and Ji Zhu had cautious looks in their eyes. They looked at Chu Yang with fear in their eyes. This big brother Chu is an extremely terrifying person. He only talked about the terror of this evil technique. But he didn't say how to break it. This made the people of Jianghu feel insecure. And all the big clans became vigilant. So, the Meng clan was excluded from this. So, he had ruthlessly cut the Meng clan from its roots. And he had damaged its tendons and bones. His grasp of people's hearts is very accurate. Moreover, the effect of such rumors and slanders was dozens of times more effective than usual in the chaotic world of the three heavens. The fate of the Meng clan was almost predictable. Chu Yang smiled as he listened to these messages. He was also analyzing them. However, his heart was full of interest for the bride snatching competition. This wasn't a small matter. Almost all the big clans were going to fight here. This fight would thoroughly reflect the big camps of the three heavens. And this was what Chu Yang needed. This would help him decide where to start. After all, hearsay wasn't as good as seeing it with one's own eyes. Chu Yang looked at Dong Wulei and Ji Zhu along the way. He sighed with emotion in his heart. These big clans' grand dukes aren't ordinary people. Ji Zhu had a sloppy appearance. In fact, he was sloppy. However, Chu Yang felt that he was a wise man who appeared to be stupid. He was sloppy on the outside. But he wasn't a fool on the inside. Moreover, his sloppy and lazy appearance had become his best camouflage. He was a person who was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Dong Wulei's scheming was deep. Moreover, he was also very suspicious. He was far less straightforward than Dong Wushang. Of course, this was also determined by his position. He was a typical clan lord of a big clan. Moreover, Dong Wulei was very afraid of Chu Yang at present. Ji Zhu treated GMO very well among these two pairs of brothers. But Dong Wulei treated Dong Wushang. So, Chu Yang couldn't figure it out. Presumably, even Dong Wulei himself can't figure out his own thoughts. He felt that his brother was close and reliable, but he also felt that his position was threatened. His sense of crisis could not suppress his brotherly love, but his brotherly love could not replace his sense of crisis and his desire for power. Dong Wulei must be very conflicted in his heart right now, Chu Yang sighed. He looked at Dong Wushang Xian's majestic body, which was like a mountain, and his square face was calm. Chu Yang felt somewhat sad and worried for him. Does he know what his elder brother is thinking? Dong Wushang was a loyal and righteous person. Perhaps he didn't know, so he worked hard to do things for the family, to solve his elder brother's problems, and to be the leader himself. But even if he knew, he would still do it and nothing would change. This was Dong Wushang. When they reached the top of the mountain, they saw a place that looked like a large basin. You can imagine the football field now, cough cough. The place was already packed with people. Especially on a large platform that had just entered the arena, it was extremely lively. I'll bet that GMO will lose 1,000 taels. A man was jumping up and down, holding a banknote and shouting. He was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. I'll also bet that GMO will lose 10,000 taels, another man shouted. I'll bet that Gao Xing will win 10,000 taels, a big man shouted. Me too. Black lines appeared on GMO's forehead. He couldn't help but mutter, "Fuck, this old Wu is so unlikable." Chu Yang stretched out his hand and grabbed a guy who was hurriedly running over. He asked, "What's going on?" "Let me go. This old Wu is rushing to place a bet. GMO's odds of winning have already reached 1/5. Fuck, if you hold this old Wu for a while, the price will rise again." This man struggled with all his strength. Chu Yang was stunned and let go of his hand. This man quickly ran over to place a bet. He didn't even have time to see who had grabbed him. GMO, look at you. Your popularity is really... Luo Kadi sighed. Too bad. No one is betting on you to win. GMO gritted his teeth. He looked at Luo Kadi as if he wanted to eat him alive. Others won't bet on me to win. What about you? Who are you betting on? You're going to fight. Luo Kadi beamed with joy and said, Of course. We are brothers. So, I'm naturally going to fight. But, this has nothing to do with who I'm betting on, right? You're not the one who started the bet, right? You don't need to compensate me if I win, right? Then this guy took out a banknote from his bosom and dashed over, Get out of the way, get out of the way. I'm going to place a bet. The noisy crowd saw that the scraping Wolf King had come over. So, they tactfully made way for him. However, the guy in the front was still lying on the table, filling in the gambling form. He was excitedly shouting, GMO will lose this time. Wah, the odds aren't high, but I can make a profit. Wah. Second young Master Luo Kadi angrily shouted. He grabbed that guy's scalp and pressed him to the ground. He fiercely asked, Fuck. What did you say? How could that guy not recognize this Wolf King level master? His complexion immediately turned pale. He bowed and said, Young Master Luo, I didn't see you when I was laughing. I was wrong. Luo Kadi angrily said, Fuck. I'm so unlucky to run into you. Tell me, how much did you bet on GMO losing? 5,000 taels. That guy awkwardly replied. Everyone knew that Luo Kadi and GMO were the same. Betting on GMO losing was equivalent to betting on Luo Kadi losing. Unfortunately, he was caught in the act. This guy was crying because of his bad luck. Fuck you. Luo Kadi angrily said, Who told you to bet on GMO losing? Bet on him winning. Hurry up. Otherwise, I'll break your neck. That guy screamed, Young Master Luo? Young Master Luo, there's no such thing as forced gambling. It's not easy for me to make money. Clang! Luo Kadi unsheathed his long spear and pressed it against that guy's neck. He fiercely asked, Are you betting or not? That guy's life was in danger. He had no choice but to give in. He changed the betting sheet with tears and snot. GMO was extremely moved. He kept praising Chu Yang, You're my brother. Look at this. Wolf Cub is very loyal. Chu Yang curled his lips. Luo Kadi waited until GMO finished changing the betting sheet. Then he laughed out loud. Bang. He threw a stack of banknotes on the gambling table. I bet 50,000 taels. I bet on Gao Sheng winning. Earn some pocket money. I'm so damn poor. Everyone fainted at the same time. They were left lying on the ground in disarray in an instant. Even Du Shao, who was sitting behind the gambling table, was extremely surprised by this. The 2 iron balls in his hands silently fell to the ground and smashed on his own feet. However, he didn't feel anything. He looked at the unreasonable and overbearing Luo Kadi in disbelief. Who did you say you were betting on? Say it again? I obviously bet on Gao Sheng. Do you still need to ask? Luo Kadi was impatient. Quick! Quick, what are you looking at? Haven't you seen me bet 50,000 taels so boldly? Quick! Can't you see that I'm in a hurry? Du Shao was startled. He said, But aren't you going to help GMO fight? What does this have to do with gambling? Awoo! Luo Kadi twirled his fingers. He smiled obscenely. Silver, GMO was about to rush over. But Dong Wushang held him back. GMO struggled and broke free from Dong Wushang's grip. His hands were still scratching the air. His feet scratched deep marks on the ground. Dong Wushang couldn't hold him even though he was so strong. So, Dong Wushang cried out in pain, Luo Kasekt? Luo Kadi. I can't live under the same sky with you. I can't exist under the same sky with you. You and I, you are pissing me off. Luo Kadi beamed with delight. He came out with the betting sheet in his hand. He blew at the ink on it as he walked. Then, he put it in his bosom with satisfaction. He raised his head and saw GMO looking at him with a fiendish expression. He was gasping for breath. So, He couldn't help but let out a strange cry. Then he turned around and ran away. Dong Wuxiang loosened his grip in a timely manner. Ji Mo's body chased after him like an arrow. He gnashed his teeth and roared, "Little bastard! Little bastard! Don't run! I will tear you apart alive!" Luo Kadi ran away as fast as he could. Whoever doesn't run is a fool. One was chasing and the other was fleeing. They disappeared in an instant. The guy who had been forced by Luo Kadi to change the betting sheet wanted to cry, but had no tears. "You bet on Gao Xing to win. But you are forcing me to bet on Ji. What kind of motherfucker is this? Who are you betting on?" Dong Wuxiang turned around and looked at Chu Yang. "Nonsense. Of course, I'm betting on GMO to win." Chu Yang rolled his eyes. Dong Wuxiang grunted and said with a smile, "I also think that GMO will win. Others don't know the strength of us brothers. But I know it very well. Luo Kadi's move is very clever. But it's too sinister. I don't know how many people will suffer because of him." Suddenly, the sound of beating gongs and drums was heard at this moment. Meng clan has withdrawn. The competition has been changed from 8 matches to 7 matches. Ji Mo's odds have been raised to 1-3. Gao Sheng's odds have been raised to 4-1. Suddenly, there was an uproar. Why did Meng Luo withdraw? The gamblers here were engrossed in gambling. So, they didn't know about this matter. Many people stamped their feet and sighed when they heard that Ji Mo's odds had fallen. "I regret it. I bet too early." Cough cough. Let me explain. 1-3 means that you bet 1,000 taels on GMO to win. And GMO wins. Then he returns your bet money and pays you 3,000 taels. 4-1 means that you bet 4,000 taels on Gao Xing to win. And Gao Xing returns your bet money after he wins. Then he pays you 1,000 taels. Dong Wuxiang stamped his feet. He was somewhat vexed. "I was a step too late." "You're not late." Chu Yang smiled. "The odds will be adjusted. The 7th match and the 8th match are the same. Meng Luo has withdrawn. But he can't be regarded as a strong opponent based on his previous strength. So, it can be said that the other side has given up on the first match. So, their odds of winning the 7th match have increased. This adjustment is just a means, nothing more." Dong Wuxiang thought for a moment and said, "Sure enough." The people of the Ji clan and the Dong clan had already gone to find their own seats by this time. So, only Chu Yang and Dong Wuxiang were left here. The two of them sat down on a rock nearby. They looked at the bustling scene on this side and started to talk as if no one else was present. At this time, a team of black-colored cavalry was rushing towards Mt Dingjun like a whirlwind 50 kilometers away from the foot of the mountain. The bustling crowd on the mountain didn't know what to do, because the overlord of the underworld of the 3 heavens, Jun Shizhu, was about to arrive. Chapter 448. Mt Dingjun had been thrown into chaos. The matter of the Meng clan had spread like a gust of wind. Meng Luo was gnashing his teeth and cursing along the way. "Chu Yang, GMO, Luo Kadi, Dong Wuxiang. Hello, hello. I will remember you." Meng Luo clenched his teeth. "You have ruined my plans. I will fight you to the death in this life." He felt more and more that Luo Kadi and Chu Yang were 2 big scourges. One was an unreasonable robber, and the other was even more sinister. The gambling house on the summit of Mt Dingjun was getting more and more lively. The sounds of gongs and drums rang out once in a while, and then again in a while. "Attention, attention! Duke Gao Xing has arrived. His cultivation is at the peak of 2nd grade king level. He is accompanied by 10 king level experts of the Gao clan. Attention, attention! Duke Li Xiong II of the Li clan has arrived. Duke Li Xiong II is the first successor of the Li clan. His arrival represents the full support of the Li clan for Duke Gao Sheng. Attention, attention! Duke Tu Qian Hao of the Tu clan has arrived. Duke Tu is at the peak of 2nd grade king level expert. His chances of winning this fight are very high. Moreover, Duke Tu has stated that he is going to let another high-level king-level expert of the Tu clan participate in this fight. Attention, attention! Chu Yang didn't think much of it at first. But he couldn't help but be flabbergasted when he saw that more and more gamblers were joining in with the sound of beating gongs and drums. It was simply a sea of people. Is this a gambling house? I'm convinced. This is a gambling house of the entire nation. Chu Yang was startled when he saw that many king-level experts were waving their banknotes and joining in. This kind of thing is very normal. Dong Wuxiang wasn't surprised. He said, "What do the people of the upper three heavens struggle their entire lives for? First, it's for power. Second, it's for strength. Third, it's for influence. But you must have financial resources first if you want to have these things." Everyone usually ties their heads to their waistbands. They desperately look for rare medicinal ingredients. Or they do business. Or they risk their lives to kill spirit beasts. They use the pelts and cores of spirit beasts that they can't use to exchange for money. This was to support his daily needs. Or go rob and steal. That silver is bloody and full of danger. However, gambling was not the same. Risking one's head and making a bet would only earn a few thousand taels or 10,000 taels of silver. However, if one's luck was good in gambling, one would be able to turn 10,000 taels of silver into 20,000 taels of silver without using any effort. Or even 40,000 taels. Tell me, how safe is that? Hafez. Chu Yang snorted and said, "But what if we're unlucky? If you're unlucky, you can just go out and work hard to earn money. If you can't earn, you'll die." That's not a big deal. Dong Wuxiang played it down. This is the environment. The so-called fairness and reason did not exist in the three heavens. The so-called mercy and forgiveness are even more nonsense. As for the so-called righteousness and evil, they are just nonsense. Tu Qianhao and Li Xiong too have also come to buy. Dong Wuxiang glanced in that direction. Then he disdainfully said, "Bill, I want to fight against Tu Qianhao this time. Say, what if I kill Tu Qianhao?" Chu Yang was startled. Slaughter? Those are the future 12 influential figures of the three heavens. You want to kill them? You, Dong Wuxiang, are the two hooligans. Tu Qianhao has appeared this time because of Gu Duxing. But second brother Gu has suffered some injuries some time ago. His strength may not be affected too much. But his chances of winning against Tu Qianhao aren't big. This is also the reason why Ji Mo's chances of winning are so low. Dong Wuxiang's eyes turned cold as he said, Tu Qianhao clearly wants to take advantage of people's difficulties. He wants to take advantage of second brother Gu's injuries to defeat him in one fell swoop. He wants to establish his own supreme prestige. He's dreaming. Dong Wuxiang, despise this kind of people the most. Therefore, I want to exchange opponents with second brother Gu. I want to kill this bastard who takes advantage of people's difficulties. Du Xing is injured? Chu Yang frowned. He seemed to be lost in thought as he said, "Yes. Moreover, each clan has two younger brothers. For example, the Ji clan has Gmo and Jiju. My clan has me and my elder brother. And the Luo clan has Luo Kuwu. This is a competition between the younger brothers of aristocratic clans. But Tu Qianhao has said that he wants to send a high-level king-level expert of his clan. This is a bastard's behavior." Dong Wuxiang clenched his teeth. What will the consequences be if Tu Qianhao is killed? Chu Yang pondered and asked. The two clan won't leave the matter at that. Dong Wuxiang's eyes turned cold. They won't rest until one of us is dead. What if we destroy the two clan? Chu Yang tilted his head. He thought for a while and said, "Then we'll think of a way to destroy the two clan." Dong Wuxiang was shocked. He opened his mouth wide. He had only said that he wanted to kill Tu Qianhao. He hadn't expected that his big brother would want to destroy the entire Tu clan. That was a big clan that wasn't inferior to the Dong clan. Big brother is crazier than me. He is crazier. Li Xiong too is easier to deal with than Tu Qianhao. He can't be dealt with, Chu Yang insipidly said. Li Xiong too is just a brave man. He wants to deal with me because he has nothing better to do. Dong Wuxiang snorted disdainfully. Second brother Gu is injured. But he can easily deal with Li Xiong too. Moreover, this person is a martial arts maniac. Second brother Gu won't have to worry about his life even if he loses because of his injuries. Several people came over together at this time. Ha ha, I was wondering why I couldn't see you. So, you were hiding here. Dong Wuxiang stood up with a calm face and squinted his eyes. He then said in an ambiguous manner, "So, it's you big bosses. Why are you looking for me instead of working as a cashier?" They were the four big bankers of this gambling house: San Xie Yun, Mo Tian Yun, O Du Xiao, and Xie Dan Qiong. The faces of these four people were full of smiles. Only Mo Tian Yun had a somewhat depressed look on his face. He had already received Bamboo's letter. So, he was extremely sullen in his heart. 20 million taels wasn't a small amount. Mo Tian Yun could afford it. But it would have hurt his muscles and bones. After all, it would have been hard for him to make a quick cash flow. But his reputation would have been ruined if he hadn't taken it out. He had already handed over 20 million taels. So, his heart was aching endlessly. How could he be happy? It's just for fun. Ao Xie Yun smiled elegantly. He then looked at Chu Yang. Who is this? He had seen Chu Yang several times. But Chu Yang had disguised his appearance at that time. I'm Chu Yang. Chu Yang smiled. You must be the famous Duke Xie of the lower three heavens? Ao Xie Yun laughed. Don't say that. You're making me feel like a treacherous villain. Moreover, King of Hell Chu has single-handedly turned the entire lower three heavens upside down. So, my lifespan will be shortened if I'm praised. Chu Yang faintly smiled. Duke Xie is very well informed. Moreover, your insight is also very good. I admire you. He had immediately determined that this Chu Yang was King of Hell Chu just by hearing the two words Chu Yang. He wouldn't have dared to say such a thing if he hadn't done so. That's because Ao Xie Yun's reputation would have been swept to the ground if he had made a fool of himself. Ao Xie Yun smiled and said, Is that so? My insight is good. But, I wonder what Brother Chu's insight is like? He looked at Chu Yang jokingly and said, These three people beside me are also very famous. His meaning was very simple. He wanted to see if Chu Yang could recognize their identities. Chu Yang smiled and said, This one is graceful and elegant. Moreover, he has a kind of ethereal and pure feeling. He must be Xie Dan Qiong, Duke Xie. This one is calm and composed. He seems to have a card up his sleeve. His complexion is elegant. So, he must be Brother Mo Tian Yun? And this one is dressed in black. His complexion is grave and stern. He must be Brother O Du Xiao. He's famous for his poison in the lower three heavens, right? Chu Yang casually said. His eyes unconsciously narrowed when he mentioned Mo Tian Yun. He had an uncontrollable desire to get rid of this little guy. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in his mind, and a good idea popped up in his mind. Brother Chu's insight is very good. Ao Xie Yun clapped and laughed. Mo Tian Yun and the other two exposed a startled look on their faces. They hadn't expected that this King of Hell Chu would be able to recognize their names. Chu Yang smiled reservedly. He thought in his heart, Nonsense. I've seen all of them. It would be strange if I couldn't recognize their names. The four of you have made a fortune. It doesn't matter who wins or loses in such a big gambling game. You've made a big profit, Chu Yang smiled and said to the four bankers. Then, he started to talk about the gambling game. We had no choice but to take this risk. Ao Xie Yun forced a smile. He then nodded towards Dong Wuxiang. Brother Wuxiang is sure to win Ji Mo's match. And, King-level expert Wolf Sword also has a chance of winning. Ji Mo is slightly inferior to Gao Sheng. But, the battle is bound to be thrilling. And, Dong Wu Lei's battle is unpredictable. And Jiju can't see through Luo Kuwu. He should lose 1 point. But it's still a tie. The key lies in Brother Gu Du Xing. He's injured. Moreover, I heard that it's not light. So, he's betting on this bet. But, the problem is, this gambling game requires both sides to be evenly matched. But, there are too many people betting on Gao Sheng's victory. The odds have been adjusted to 7-1. But, there are still people betting on Gao Sheng's victory. Only a few people are betting on Ji Mo's victory. I'm afraid this gambling game won't make any money if there isn't a strong financial investment. Ao Xie Yun sighed. You can rest assured about this. Brother Ao, I'm acquainted with GMO. So, I'll boost GMO's momentum no matter what. Since the odds are already 1-1. I'll obviously bet a little, Chu Yang said with a smile. Many thanks for Brother Chu's support. Ao Xie Yun also smiled. Mo Tian Yun and the others were thinking, how much can you bet? Isn't it a drop in the bucket? It's useless. O Du Shao said in a hoarse voice, how much is Brother Chu going to bet? First update. Chapter 449. O Du Shao took them and counted them one by one. His complexion became more and more pleasantly surprised. He silently counted in his heart when he saw the last one. Then he suddenly exclaimed, 3 million gold taels? He was shocked by the number he had shouted. And he stood there in a daze. The conversion ratio of gold to silver was 1:100. These 3 million gold taels were equivalent to 300 million silver taels. Who would have thought that Chu Yang would be so ruthless as to bet 300 million silver taels? Now, it was a 1-to-1 loss. The 4 bankers would have to pay 1.8 billion silver taels if GMO won. Chu Yang had copied these from the great Zhao's imperial palace. In any case, gold and silver taels could be used all over the world. So, Chu Yang casually took them out to gamble. 300 million. Ao Xie Yun and the others turned pale with fright. They immediately gathered around O Du Shao and looked at the gold taels. Then, they looked at Chu Yang with shocked eyes. Chu Yang smiled modestly and said, well, it's just a small game. I want to earn some pocket money. The 4 elders looked at King of Hell Chu as if they were looking at a monster. It's just a small game. Earn some pocket money? Motherfucker, is your pocket money calculated in hundreds of millions? Ao Xie Yun shook his head and forced a smile. He said, a small game. Brother Chu, your style is really. But, Brother Chu, we're not outsiders. GMO's chances of losing this match are higher. So, it's better to think about it. Chu Yang's eyes flashed. He thought, this evil elder is very considerate. His words are beautiful. He said, no need. I believe that GMO will win. Haha, it's only 3 million gold taels even if he doesn't win. It's a very small amount. It's very shabby, very shabby. He looked at Mo Tian Yun as he spoke and smiled strangely. Mo Tian Yun's mood wasn't good. Chu Yang had taken out so many gold taels. So, the 4 of them would have profited if they lost. However, he couldn't help but get angry when he heard Chu Yang's words, and saw that Chu Yang was looking at him with contempt. He secretly said, motherfucker. Did I offend you? You're so polite to others. But why do you look at me like this? Do I have a grudge against you? Mo Tian Yun guessed right. Chu didn't just have a grudge against him. Mo Tian Yun became angry in his heart. He curled his lips and said, it's just a small toy, but I wonder how big Brother Chu's toy would be if it were a big one? Chu Yang smiled. However, he was a little disappointed in his heart. I didn't drag these 3 clans down with me. Therefore, he looked at Mo Tian Yun meaningfully and said, Brother Mo, these aren't the 4 of you. Mo Tian Yun snorted and said, if that's the case, does Brother Chu dare to bet with me? Chu Yang's eyes narrowed dangerously as he said, what do you think? Ao Xie Yun sensed that there was something wrong between Chu Yang and Mo Tian Yun. So, he couldn't help but look at them suspiciously. I bet on Gao Sheng, you bet on GMO, 1-on-1. The odds were 1-1. I will take as many as you have. Mo Tian Yun said in a relaxed manner. Xie Dan Qiong and O Du Shao exposed a displeased look on their faces. Does Mo Tian Yun want to take all the food for himself? His table manners were a little unsightly. Good. Chu Yang casually fished out a big stack of gold notes. This stack was much thicker than the previous one. He smiled and said, I don't have much money here. This is all I have. It's 10 million taels of gold. Brother Mo, we will bet on this as long as you can take it out and take it. The facial muscles of Ao Xie Yun, Xie Dan Qiong and O Du Shao twitched at the same time. 10 million taels of gold. 1 billion taels of silver. Everything would become Mo Tianyun's if Mo Tianyun could take it out and GMO lost. Of course, if GMO were to win, then Mo Tianyun would lose everything. Chu Yang didn't take it out because the amount was too big. Moreover, the odds were 1-1. So, Ao Xie Yun and the others wouldn't have taken it out even if he had full confidence. They would have ended up in a deadlock instead. Now that the odds were 1-1, the other three would have only envied Mo Tianyun. So, there shouldn't be any problem. The expression on Mo Tianyun's face suddenly became very wonderful. He was rich, but he couldn't compare with the national treasury of Great Zhao, which was the most prosperous country at that time. He took a few deep breaths. Then he stared at the 10 million taels of gold notes with a greedy look on his face. He would have been able to recruit at least 100 king-level experts and 3,000 senior revered martial artists to work for him if he won this money. Moreover, he would have had the best armors, weapons and mounts. That would have been an enormous force. But he couldn't take out so much money at present. In fact, he couldn't even take out 1/10 of it. He had put most of his wealth into gambling. So, he could only take out 80 million taels of silver at present. And this was his backup plan in case of any eventuality. Mo Tianyun thought for a long time. Then, he suddenly turned around resolutely. He looked at Ao Xie Yun and said, "Brother Ao, I want to borrow some money from you." Ao Xie Yun wrinkled his brows. "You motherfucker, you just wanted to kick us aside. But, you still have the nerve to turn around and borrow money? Fuck, how can you not feel embarrassed?" Xie Dan Qiong and Odu Shao also wrinkled their brows. This Mo Tianyun is willing to do anything for the sake of 10 million taels of silver. He doesn't even care about his face. Ao Xie Yun looked at Mo Tianyun and said, "Brother don't you think it's too rash to borrow money from me under such circumstances? What will happen to our gambling house if I lend you money? Moreover, won't Brother Chu become my enemy?" Mo Tianyun's expression tightened. Chu Yang interrupted and said, Borrow money? Well, as long as you can borrow it. I don't care about 10 million taels of silver. It's just that it's too shameful. Borrow money? Borrow money? Chu Yang's arrogant demeanor made Ao Xie Yun and the others wrinkle their brows. Mo Tianyun's face turned red as he said, "Isn't it just some stinky money? You're just a rich man from the lower three heavens. Do you really think that you can become the boss of the lower three heavens just because you have a lot of money?" Chu Yang snorted coldly and said, "You're right. It's just some stinky money. But you can't even take out this stinky money. What are you showing off in front of me for?" Mo Tianyun snorted. His face turned red as he said loudly, "Brother Ao, I'll use my clan's gold mines as collateral for 500 million taels of silver. Brother Xie, Brother O, I'll use my clan's 2 iron mines as collateral for 200 million taels of silver. The land deeds are here. If I lose, these will all belong to you. If I win, Brother Ao will have 200 million taels of silver, and Brother O and Brother Xie will each have 100 million taels of silver. Just take it as interest. How about it?" Mo Tianyun knew that even if he used his clan's assets as collateral, the three of them might not be willing to lend him money. They would have to give him some benefits. For example, they would have to get a share of this 10 million taels of silver. So he immediately made this promise. Good. The three of them agreed at the same time. It didn't matter if they won or lost. The value of the Mo clan's gold mines and iron mines was far more than what Mo Tianyun had said. Even though he was very confident, Mo Tianyun was still taking a big risk. After giving the 3 land deeds to Ao Xie Yun and the other 2, Mo Tianyun immediately searched his body. He borrowed 100 million taels of silver, added 80 million taels of silver, added 2 purple crystals, 3 gems, and 12 jade pendants. He had a total of 1 billion taels of silver. Mo Tianyun would lose his family fortune if he were to lose this match. He was also taking a risk. Moreover, he was certain that he would win. Because he knew very well that Gu Duxing's injuries were caused by Mo Tianyun leading the experts to ambush him. His injuries were not light. Even after half a year, he might not be able to recover. Right at this moment, a laughter was heard. A person said, "If you don't mind, how about this Duke be the witness?" Before the voice even faded, everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A tall figure in green silently landed on the field. He had an arrogant smile on his face. He stood in the field with his arms crossed. His 2 feet stepped on the pile of banknotes as if he was stepping on trash. He smiled disdainfully. Facing the 5 Grand Dukes of the 3 heavens, he was still insufferably arrogant. It was as if he didn't put them in his eyes. Duque. It was actually this terrifying character of the 3 heavens. It's time for the second update. I'll continue to write. I'm begging for monthly votes. Chapter 450. Ao Xie Yun and the other 3 revealed a look of fear in their eyes. They smiled and said, "With Duke Yu's guarantee, of course we can rest assured." However, their hearts were beating like drums. How did this terrifying guy appear here at this moment? Didn't he leave after he withdrew from the bet? Duke Yu laughed and said, "I didn't expect my character to be so strong. Everyone trusts me so much. This is a great thing for me." Then, he tilted his head and looked at Chu Yang. He smiled and said, "King of Hell Chu. It's been a long time since we last met. How have you been?" There were so many men around, but he ignored them. Instead, the first one he greeted was Chu Yang. It seemed that King of Hell Chu, who had just ascended from the lower 3 heavens to the upper 3 heavens, had a much higher position in his heart than the 4 dukes in front of him. "Brother Yu is still alive. I naturally wouldn't dare to be unwell." Chu Yang smiled faintly. Duke Yu laughed. Ao Xie Yun and the other 3 revealed a look of shock. They were extremely surprised that Duke Yu didn't get angry when Chu Yang called him that. Everyone in the upper 3 heavens knew that Duke Yu was a typical weirdo. The subordinates of the Dark Bamboo could call him Minister Yu. However, outsiders could only call him Duke Yu. If they called him something else, even Grandpa Yu, it wouldn't do. He would definitely be furious. He would even chase them for thousands of miles to punish them for their disrespect. However, Chu Yang was so bold as to call him Brother Yu. Moreover, this big monster was so happy. What was going on? Duke Yu laughed for a while and said, "Ao Xie Yun, don't say that the Dark Bamboo reneged on the bet. Well, Minister Jun ordered me to place the bet 2 days later. However, since I'm the notary today, I'm afraid that you'll say that I'm taking money from this bet. Therefore, I'm giving you the bet in advance." As he spoke, he took out a small package from his bosom and threw it to Ao Xie Yun. He said coldly, "The Dark Bamboo's bet is 500 million taels of silver on Jianghu's victory." He tilted his head and laughed strangely. He said, "I seem to have heard that it's 1-to-1? Now, even if I lose, I'll be satisfied. If I win, I'll make a big profit." The faces of Ao Xie Yun and the other 3 instantly turned ugly. It was as if he had suddenly stepped on cow dung while walking on the road, and then fell down with his mouth open. Then he ate the cow dung that he stepped on. The gambling house had already been opened a month in advance. So far, the total number of bets on Gao Xing's victory was only 500 million. Even if the gambling house started in 2 days, it would be incredible if the bets increased by another 200 to 300 million. However, the number of people who bet on Jianghu's victory was pitifully small. The 4 of them had been worried that they might not be able to make ends meet. Therefore, they raised Jianghu's odds. But they didn't expect that after raising the odds, the casino didn't make any money. Instead, they bet 800 million. Chu Yang's 300 million was already very strenuous for this gambling house. However, the Dark Bamboo had also bet 500 million. If GMO were to win, then the 4 great clans would have to pay a total of 8 billion. Even if they could gather 1 billion here, the 3 families would have to come up with another 38 billion. That was equivalent to 1 billion each. That was an astronomical figure. There was no doubt that the Mo clan would be crippled if Gao Xing were to lose. Ao clan, Xie clan, and O clan would also be half crippled. The Ao clan's strength was a bit stronger, so it would only suffer some minor injuries. However, the other 2 clans would be half crippled. This price was a bit too high. It would be even more impossible for them to renege on the debt if GMO were to win. Who would dare to renege on the debt of Jun Shizhu and Dukyu in the entire three heavens? Even if they didn't renege on the debt, they would still have to worry about collecting protection fees. What? You don't want to accept my bet? Dukyu's complexion turned ugly. My silver, isn't it silver? Is it stone? Dukyu is joking. Since we've opened the gambling house, we'll accept it no matter how big the bet is. The four of them laughed and said. Then, let's open the betting list. Dukyu rubbed his hands and said, open the betting list for King of Hell Chu as well. We'll split it and go drinking. Ao Xie-yun and the other three frowned as they watched Dukyu and Dukyu swagger away with the betting list. There's something wrong with this matter. Why do I feel as if I've fallen into a trap? Ao Xie-yun frowned. Du Zhao's complexion turned heavy as he said, where did they get such great certainty that GMO would win? 800 million at once. Plus, that King of Hell Chu's 1 billion, it would be 8 billion. Mo Tianyun insipidly said, let's calculate it now. Gao Sheng and Gao Liang will fight on Gao Sheng's side. Li Xiong Tu and Li Hong Tu will fight on Li Clan's side. Tu Qian Hao and Tu Wancheng will fight on Tu Clan's side. Tu Wancheng's appearance is somewhat against the rules. But Tu Clan doesn't have two dukes. So, it's pardonable. Moreover, Gao Meng will be added to Gao Clan's side. These are the 7 people who will fight on Gao Clan's side. Ao Xieyin said, over there are GMO, Jizhu, Dong Wushang, Dong Wulei, Luo Kadi, Luo Kuwu and Gu Duxing. Gu Duxing is seriously injured in this match. So, it's tantamount to his defeat. GMO has no hope of victory against Gao Sheng. Luo Kuwu will lose no matter who he's up against. This means that GMO has already lost 3 matches. And Tu Wancheng is a king-level expert of the previous generation. He has a good chance of winning no matter who he's up against. Gao Sheng has already won 4 matches. Li Xiong Tu can also win 1 match. And there are only 2 people who have the best chance of winning on that side. They are Dong Wushang and Luo Kadi. And Luo Kadi will have to face whoever he's up against. Ao Xie-yun squatted down and drew a map on the ground. He repeatedly shook his head and said in a puzzled manner, no matter how you look at it, GMO will lose. Xie Dan Qiong's complexion was heavy as he said, there must be something that we can't calculate. Otherwise, King of Hell Chu and Dark Bamboo wouldn't have sent money together. King of Hell Chu can reluctantly say that it's for GMO's sake. But Dark Bamboo has no reason to meddle in this matter. Ao Xie-yun quietly stood there and pondered. Then he slowly said, it's over. I don't want to do this kind of thing again in the future. It doesn't matter if I win or lose. Moreover, Ao Xie-yun, won't be there as long as Mo Tianyun is there. You can leave if I'm there. Mo Tianyun was startled. He sneered and said, what? You feel that I've implicated you now? But why didn't you say that when you thought that you could make money? Moreover, are you so sure that we'll lose this time? Ao Xie-yun didn't speak. He coldly glanced at Mo Tianyun. Then he turned around and walked out. He stopped after he had walked 7 or 8 steps. Then he said without turning his head, it's not about winning or losing this time. It's just that I feel very uncomfortable when I'm with you. Then he walked out. He walked out in a relaxed manner. Xie Dan Qiong sighed. He and Du Zhao looked at each other. Then, both of them exchanged glances and said, Brother Mo, it's useless to say anything now. We've already received the bet. So, let's wait for the final result. Mo Tianyun's complexion was gloomy. He slowly stood up and said, I'm going to tell Gao Sheng that he can get 10% of the bet as long as he wins this time. And the 3 of us will share this 10%. Do you have any objections? Xie Dan Qiong and Du Zhao were startled. They looked at Mo Tianyun in astonishment. Xie Dan Qiong pondered for a long while and said, I don't agree as an individual. But I have no choice but to agree for the sake of the clan. However, you have to be careful. Don't let the news leak out. Mo Tianyun insipidly nodded. Then he turned around and left. The remaining 2 people smiled bitterly at each other. Xie Dan Qiong said, Du Zhao, what do you think? Du Zhao pondered and said, We won't win honorably even if we win this way. This makes me feel very uncomfortable. Xie Dan Qiong sighed softly and said, what do you think if we win? Du Shao looked at him and said, share the profits equally with GMO and the others? You'll become a lifelong enemy if you give him money if you do that. And you'll become a lifelong enemy. Xie Dan Qiong insipidly said, I'll owe GMO a favor if we win. Then I'll look for an opportunity to help him. What do you think? Du Zhao's eyes lit up as he said, good idea. Jianghu was a place where gratitude and resentment existed. The decision of Xie Dan Qiong and Du Shao was an appropriate reflection of the diplomatic policy of the aristocratic clans. I won't offend you because I'm afraid that you'll fight me to the death. So, I won't deliberately get close to you. I'll arouse other people's suspicion. I'll have a reason to get close to you if you're strong. I'll follow everyone and trample on you if you're down and out. This was equivalent to the rule of the three heavens. Xie Dan Qiong nodded and said, we'll go to encircle and annihilate the spirit beasts after this gamble. And the three heavens will become more and more chaotic. It will almost reach the peak of chaos. So, there will inevitably be a unification. Or, several clans will be purged after the chaos, and everything will return to a peaceful state. Du Shao also sighed, isn't this the real purpose of our gambling house? But who would have thought that it would be so big? We only wanted to collect some of the wealth of those scattered people. Then we would recruit them and expand our forces. But the gamble is so big that even our clans have been implicated. Xie Dan Qiong remained silent and said, our clans will become weak if Gao Sheng loses after this. So, we'll have no choice but to live in seclusion. We'll immediately return to our clans after the encirclement and annihilation of the spirit beasts. And we'll do our best to protect our clans. Du Shao frowned, I'm afraid that we won't be able to avoid it even if we live in seclusion. Don't forget that the master of Calamity Sword is still hiding in the dark. Xie Dan Qiong was startled. He then sighed. Both of them sighed and walked back. This 500 million bet is a gift for you. It's a big gift. Minister Jun said that only Minister Chu's brother can receive it. Duke Yu slowly said while walking. It's a big favor. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. Then he smiled. Your Minister Jun is very courageous. Chapter 451. Duke Yu smiled meaningfully. He looked at Chu Yang and said, come, let's talk at my place. At Duke Yu's residence, Duke Yu served food and wine and drank with Dong Wushang and Chu Yang. Although Dong Wushang had heard of Duke Yu's fierce reputation, it was his first time meeting him. However, he remained calm and collected. He was neither servile nor overbearing. Duke Yu deliberately looked at Dong Wushang a few more times before he looked at Chu Yang and said, I've seen your brothers. I have to say that you have a good eye. Your friends are also good. He smiled and said, the one with the greatest potential is the one in front of you and the one from Gu clan. However, the other three are also rare geniuses. Duke Yu could be said to be a top figure in the three heavens. Even he said such words. It could be seen that he valued Chu Yang's brothers very much. Chu Yang was silent, but his eyes revealed pride. He deliberately lowered his head to hide the pride in his eyes. My brothers, my pride. Dong Wushang felt hot. He was drinking with these two people. Naturally, he had to secretly pay attention to everything. He could clearly see the pride in Chu Yang's eyes. He suddenly wanted to cry. Who would be proud of themselves? Father and mother, this was for sure. However, he had only seen this kind of pride today, apart from his parents. And the other party was still hiding it. His big brother was also proud of him. However, every time he achieved something big, his big brother's eyes would always be filled with pride, and fear. It was extremely complicated. Dong Wushang knew what his big brother was worried about. However, he didn't want to expose it. He didn't want to be the clan lord. Even if he suspected his big brother, he would still help him if he didn't. Because his surname was Dong. As a clan lord, he couldn't be a good clan lord if he didn't have such vigilance. Therefore, Dong Wushang understood. However, it didn't mean that he felt good in his heart. After all, who would feel good if they were suspected by their own brothers. Especially when he was full of sincerity, Dong Wushang looked at Chu Yang and lowered his head. He didn't say anything. The hair on his forehead drooped down and covered his eyes. Dong Wushang raised his head and poured a cup of wine into his heart along with this precious brotherhood. His heart was burning. You have so many brothers, and good brothers at that. Of course, you won't be lonely. Duke, you said, therefore, since you've come to the three heavens, you must have your own position. You, Chu Yenhui, won't be willing to submit to others. Am I right? Neither your brother's family nor the dark bamboo will be able to keep you. Am I right? Chu Yang simply admitted. So, you're making use of this bet. To cause a change in power. So that you can fish in troubled waters. Duke Yu narrowed his eyes. But the light in his eyes was so sharp that he couldn't look directly at Chu Yang. Sometimes, I really don't understand how you can take advantage of every opportunity so perfectly. Chu Yang smiled. Isn't your dark bamboo also using this bet to create chaos in the world? Let your bamboos sprout in some new areas? Therefore, this 500 million is a big favor. But, regardless of whether I accept it or not, and regardless of the outcome of the bet, your gains will be much more than this 500 million, right? Duke Yu looked at him for a while. Then, he suddenly laughed. Chu Yenhui is indeed worthy of being called Chu Yenhui. Moreover, the Gao clan deliberately made this matter so big. Is it really to snatch a wife? Everyone knows that Gao Xing doesn't like Hu Yan. Chu Yang coldly smiled. Ao clan, Mo clan, Xie clan, and O clan, these four big dukes are manipulating this bet. Is it really just for money? Are all the big clans participating in this competition to help these two people snatch wives? Everyone has their own plans in the three heavens. Chu Yang said, even if I didn't come, and even if the dark bamboo didn't exist, the reign of terror and the unification of the three heavens would have already begun. But the dark bamboo can't be the one to unify the three heavens. Duke Yu held his wine cup and said in a deep voice, that's because you're the underworld. Once you unify the three heavens will inevitably go to war. Those self-proclaimed righteous people will continuously resist. Then, your gains won't make up for your losses. Chu Yang coldly smiled. But, do you know that you've already become the dream of all the youngsters in the three heavens? Many people are saying that they won't be afraid of anyone as long as they have the same achievements as Duke Yu in this life. Chu Yang mockingly smiled. Moreover, these are the words of the more accomplished people. But when they reach your level, will they be afraid of anyone? Will they be content? Duke Yu became silent. His eyes flickered as he looked at Chu Yang and said, say it all in one breath. I'm also afraid when I'm alone. Chu Yang softly said, but I'm not afraid sometimes. For example, Brother Yu Wushang and I won't be your match if we have a life and death battle with you. We'll die for sure. But we're not afraid. Do you know why? Duke Yu couldn't help but ask, why? Chu Yang and Dong Wushang smiled at each other. Then they said in unison, because I have brothers by my side. I don't care if they live or die. Duke Yu quietly looked at the wine cup. He didn't speak for a long time. When I was in the lower three heavens, I once said to Du Xing, if my brother needs to go to the Mountain of Blades, I'm willing to let him step on me. Even if he steps on me, he can only take one more step. Chu Yang smiled. I can also say this here. Perhaps, in your eyes, we're gathered together to fight back. But I can tell you with certainty, if one of our brothers dies, then none of the others will survive. He proudly smiled and said, because, before the last brother dies in battle, he'll discover that his brothers have already died in front of him. And you don't understand this. Chu Yang concluded, let me return your words of, fight back. Duke Yu laughed and said cheerfully, why are you talking about this? Let's drink, let's drink. The three of them laughed at the same time. But each of their smiles had a different meaning. Duke Yu drank while thinking of two words in his heart, brothers? Brothers? Do such brothers really exist? Who wouldn't want such brothers? But, do they really exist in this world? Dong Wushang was also thinking to himself, will I fight until the last moment for my brothers? Chu Yang, on the other hand, was thinking, brothers aren't words. In the blink of an eye, they were full. Duke Yu stood up to send the guests off. He smiled at Chu Yang and said, don't forget that I still owe you something. Chu Yang couldn't help but smile and said, even if you forget, I won't forget. He waved his hand and left. Duke Yu waved his hand and stood there thinking. When he came back to his senses, he realized that Chu Yang and Dong Wushang had already walked side by side to the corner. Suddenly his eyes flashed. He waved his hand and a short saber suddenly flew out of his hand with a swoosh. It shot back towards Dong Wushang's back. This saber was like a thunderbolt and as fast as lightning. Without any warning. Not only did Chu Yang not expect this, even Duke Yu himself absolutely didn't expect this before he had this thought. He even regretted it immediately after he had released this saber. This saber had already used 30% of Duke Yu's strength. And it was a sneak attack. The speed of the saber was actually much faster than the speed of sound. A swoosh was just heard when the tip of the saber had already reached Dong Wushang's back. Dong Wushang and Chu Yang's expressions changed greatly. They never thought that Duke Yu would suddenly use poison to counterattack. It was already too late to dodge. Seeing that the saber was about to pierce through his heart, Dong Wushang's eyes revealed a look of despair. Chu Yang instantly became extremely nervous. His eyes widened instantly. He didn't have time to think and subconsciously grabbed the saber. Chapter 452. The blade of the flying knife was caught by Chu Yang. The sharp blade came into contact with Dong Wushang's flesh and blood flowed out. However, the remaining force was still extremely strong. It carried Chu Yang's right hand and continued to rush towards Dong Wushang's back. However, the speed of the flying knife finally slowed down. It only slowed down for a moment. Chu Yang's body was also thrown to one side by this violent force. He didn't have time to think. He screamed and stretched out his left hand without thinking. He grabbed the tip of the knife tightly. The tip of the knife broke through Chu Yang's palm bone. His heaven-splitting divine technique was broken through in an instant. Blood spurted out. Chu Yang's wrist turned to the side. He used his bones to hold the blade tightly. I must block it. If I can't block it, my brother will die. This was the only thought left in Chu Yang's mind. He didn't even think that this was Duke Yu's hand until now. At this time, the sword spirit reacted. He immediately moved. Then, the strength of the flying knife was still as violent as before. It carried Chu Yang's body and slammed into Dong Wushang's back. The two of them flew out together. The flying knife pierced through Chu Yang's hands like candied haws. It then pierced into Dong Wushang's body. After some buffer, it deviated and pierced into Dong Wushang's shoulder. The two of them were pierced together by this flying knife. Fortunately, the sword spirit blocked it at the last moment. Otherwise, this flying knife would have pierced through Chu Yang's palms and pierced into Dong Wushang's back. Chu Yang fell down. He immediately jumped up and pulled the knife out of Dong Wushang's shoulder. His hands were still pierced together. However, he didn't have time to deal with it. The anger in his heart had reached a boiling point. He suddenly jumped up and roared furiously, "Why?" Dong Wushang suddenly jumped up from the ground. When he saw that Chu Yang's hands had been pierced by the flying daggers, his eyes suddenly widened in anger. He let out a wild roar and pulled out the black saber that weighed 570 kilograms. His eyes were bloodshot. His body suddenly flew up and turned into a streak of black lightning. He disregarded all consequences and pounced towards Duke Yu. This saber was thrown out without any care for defense. The intense anger of being deceived made Dong Wushang lose his mind at this moment. Blood was spurting out from his shoulder along with the violent circulation of his spiritual power. However, he had already forgotten all of this. Despicable man! What a disgrace to the name of an expert! You actually took advantage of my unpreparedness to launch a sneak attack. My brother, my boss, in order to block the blade for me, both of his hands were crippled. Dong Wushang had forgotten everything at this moment. He only knew that he had to kill the person in front of him. He had never considered that he was no match for the other party. but he just casually dodged and strangely dodged it. Dong Wuxiang furiously chased after him. But Duke Yu's figure flashed, and he was already beside Chu Yang. His hand hovered above Chu Yang's head as he shouted, "Stop!" Dong Wuxiang's whole body shook, and he fell from the sky with a pew sound. The ground he stepped on cracked. He shouted angrily, "Feng Wukai, my boss!" Chu Yang had already stood up by himself. He looked at Duke Yu coldly. "Why?" Duke Yu looked at the knife in Chu Yang's hand and the bloody palm that had already been pierced through. A trace of guilt flashed through his eyes. He stretched out his hand and quickly pushed the flying knife away from Chu Yang's hand. The speed was so fast that Chu Yang didn't even have time to react. Duke Yu looked at the blood dripping from the blade and let out a long sigh. Chu Yang snorted coldly and suddenly said angrily, "Fuck you! Are you testing us?" When he thought of this, he suddenly became so angry that his whole body trembled. This bastard, just because he didn't believe my words, he actually used such a cruel method to test us? When he thought of how Dong Wuxiang would have become a corpse if he had hesitated just now, he couldn't help but feel scared. His anger towards Duke Yu also rose like a flame. Duke Yu still looked deeply at the knife, and his face was full of disappointment. He sighed softly and said, "I'm sorry." As a peerless figure of the three heavens, this was the first time in his life that Duke Yu was apologizing. He continued, "Just now, you said that your brothers would follow each other in life and death. I didn't believe you." He sighed deeply and said, "But this time I believe you." He laughed self-mockingly and said, "Who asked you to be so proud?" He sighed deeply again and said in a low voice, "Why don't I have such brothers? If I had them, I wouldn't be afraid of anything." Dong Wuxiang had already arrived in front of Chu Yang at lightning speed. Boss, your hand?" He suddenly shouted, "Duke Yu, you son of a bitch! I'll kill you!" Chu Yang's hand had 2 horrifying holes. His 10 fingers were almost all broken. His flesh was badly mutilated, and it was too horrible to look at. Chu Yang stretched out his hand and stopped Dong Wuxiang. His hand was bleeding, but he had already regained his composure. However, his chest was still heaving up and down. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. "Brother Duke Yu, I want an explanation. Otherwise, if I don't die today, the dark bamboo will not be left alive. I can do it if you want to." "Explanation?" Duke Yu smiled. "All right, I'll listen to your explanation." Suddenly, he flipped his hand, and the flying knife pierced 10 big holes in his arm. Then, he bit the knife and pierced another 10 holes in his other arm. Fresh blood flowed out. Duke Yu stood straight, and his expression didn't change. He spat out the flying knife. The flying knife turned into a white light and flew out with a schwa sound. It actually pierced deeply into the mountain rocks, until the hilt was visible. "This knife is stained with my brother's blood. I'll abandon it." Duke Yu said lightly, "There's another explanation. Before you and your brothers break through to the martial saint level, I can be your sparring partner. I can help you break through. If you're still not satisfied, you can come and destroy the dark bamboo." Martial saint level? Doesn't this mean that Duke Yu admitted that he was a martial saint? No one in the 3 heavens knew Duke Yu's true strength, but no matter how strong their guess was, they would never guess that this terrifying person in the 3 heavens was actually a martial saint. One had to admit that this temptation was quite big. Dong Wuxiang didn't listen at all. He said furiously, "Nonsense! Is my brother's blood going to flow just like that? Who cares about the martial saint level? What you've said is not even worth the blood of my boss." "Wuxiang!" Chu Yang shouted and stopped Dong Wuxiang. Duke Yu's probing was true. Although his methods were too vicious, the compensation he gave made Chu Yang very tempted. With Duke Yu as the #1 super sparring partner, the strength of these brothers would increase by leaps and bounds in a single day. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Then he turned to Duke Yu. "Brother Yu, what would have happened if I didn't block it?" "Didn't block it?" Duke Yu coldly snorted. "When I was giving out the blade, I purposely gave you a chance to block the attack for your brother. If you were only boasting about Brother Yuan in front of me and didn't block the attack, the 2 of you would have already become corpses." He smiled coldly. No one can deceive me like this in front of me. Dukyu sighed and said, I also regretted it after I threw out the saber. He insipidly glanced at Chu Yang. It seemed as if he was explaining, apologizing, or envious of Chu Yang. In short, he used an extremely complicated tone and slowly said in a low and deep voice, I don't even have half a brother like you in my generation. Then, he said, you can hate me or blame me. His body floated up and disappeared with a whoosh. A sigh came from the air. I'm very envious of you brothers. Chu Yang didn't even have time to vent his anger before he disappeared without a trace. He couldn't help but curse and said, let's go. He stretched out his hand and an incomplete version of the heavy pill appeared in his hand. He threw it into his mouth. This time, the saber wound was very serious. His fingers were almost cut off. Other than the heavy pill, no other medicine could heal so quickly. Chu Yang was very angry when he thought of this inexplicable assassination. But he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No wonder Dukyu was regarded as a scourge in the dark three heavens. This person's evil nature and unreasonable behavior were really unique. Dong Wuxiang gritted his teeth. His eyes were red. He was very unwilling to accept this. Looking at his appearance, he wanted to go back and ask Dukyu for help. Chu Yang sighed and said, Wuxiang, your temper? You have to be careful. When it's time to risk your life, you will naturally risk your life. But when it's not time to risk your life, you will risk your life. You have to remember this. Dong Wuxiang shivered. It was as if cold water had been poured on his head. He became clear-headed in an instant and said, Yes, big brother. He walked over and carefully supported Chu Yang as they walked out. After walking a few steps, he suddenly turned around and said loudly, Dukyu, I can't beat you now. So, I'm leaving. But one day I will make you pay for this stab. After he finished speaking, he waited for a while. Seeing that Dukyu didn't respond, Dong Wuxiang snorted and strode away with Chu Yang. In the bamboo house, Dukyu had a complicated expression on his face. He looked at the wounds on his arms and sighed in disappointment. Looking at the backs of the two leaving side by side, Dukyu suddenly felt very warm in his heart. It was as if the backs of the two made him feel that, with each other by his side, there was really nothing to worry about. They weren't even afraid of death. Dukyu's heart was filled with deep envy. He sighed softly. Then he slightly operated his martial power and looked at his wounds. Suddenly, two blazing white lights emitted from his eyes. The white lights shone on his wounds. Suddenly, those terrifying wounds closed up and healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Dukyu felt that he had never been so honest in his life. The moment he made his move, he really regretted it. If Chu Yang hadn't blocked it, he would have killed the two of them. But Chu Yang had blocked it. He had blocked it subconsciously. Dukyu was very shocked at that time. He remembered Chu Yang's words. If my brother wants to cross the mountain of swords, I'm willing to let him step on me. Even if stepping on me can only take one step forward. Before the last brother dies in battle, he will find that the other brothers have already died in front of him. Because I have brothers by my side. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of anything. Thinking of the two determined faces that were emitting sincere pride when they said these words, Dukyu suddenly felt very lonely in his heart. That was why he blurted out the promise that he would be her sparring partner before she reached the saint level. There had never been a martial saint who was willing to be someone's sparring partner. Not to mention Dukyu, who was known for his arrogance, cruelty, and temperament. But at this moment, Dukyu didn't feel any regret in his heart, because he felt that it was worth it. Brothers and sisters, have the monthly votes stopped increasing? Okay, let me use more to exchange for the monthly votes in your hands. Chapter 453. Dong Wuxiang didn't say anything. He didn't show any special reaction to Chu Yang blocking the saber for him. But his heart was still trembling and burning. Dong Wuxiang's character was different from Chu Yang's. He was somewhat similar to Gu Duxing's. Chu Yang's character was that he would definitely do what he said. He was a man of his word. He would definitely say it after he did it. Chu Yang would never bury any of his achievements. In his previous life, he had seen many people who were too embarrassed to say what they had done and were misunderstood. He had also seen many people who only knew how to do things but didn't say it. So, Chu Yang realized a principle: if you don't say it, how would others know what you did? If you did it but didn't say it, how would others give you recognition? This was a world of competition. And it was a competition of life and death. He couldn't do anything stupid. After walking for several hundred feet, Chu Yang circulated his martial energy to activate the medicinal efficacy. He rubbed his hand gently. The wound had already scabbed. Although there was still some pain, it was no longer a big problem. This fact made Dong Wushang widen his eyes. Chu Yang smiled and patted his shoulder with his palm. He blinked and said, "Don't worry, I have elixirs. I'm not afraid of injuries." He blinked again and said, "So you don't have to be afraid either." Dong Wushang widened his eyes and suddenly laughed heartily. This time, his mood was completely relaxed. Chu Yang also laughed happily. He scolded jokingly, "Damn it, a saint-level sparring partner. I've really profited this time. If that guy knew that I would recover so quickly, he would be depressed to death." Dong Wushang laughed so hard that he was out of breath. He said, "Yes, but." He laughed and laughed. Then he suddenly paused and said, "But, whether it's a sparring partner or no matter what, I'll get my revenge from Elder Yu sooner or later." Dong Wushang's voice became low and deep. "Originally, my martial arts wish was to become a saber emperor. I didn't even think about becoming a saber monarch. But after meeting you, my goal changed to saber monarch. But now, I only have one goal, and that is to defeat Elder Yu and get my revenge. I'll never forget this saber strike." Dong Wushang looked into the void and said deeply. Chu Yang smiled and didn't say anything. It seemed that defeating Elder Yu would become Dong Wushang's long-term goal. Having such a goal was a blessing. He pondered and said, "Just a moment ago, we were still chatting and laughing freely, drinking at the same table. The next moment, we were already facing each other in a life-and-death battle, with cold blades and cold blades. Without friendship, without feelings, without benefits, with only personal joy and anger, with only a moment of inspiration, you can kill." And he killed someone who could barely be considered a friend. He sighed softly, "Wu Shang, Duke Yu has given me an incomparably profound lesson. That's 3 days of Jianghu, boss." Dong Wushang stepped on the thick pine needles, making rustling sounds. He said in a deep voice, "The upper 3 heavens and the lower 3 heavens are 2 completely different planes. Boss, we have to be clear about this. If there comes a day when our brothers are no longer by your side, you must never, ever, ever be soft-hearted." Chu Yang nodded silently. "Don't let him reveal Duke Yu's strength," Chu Yang warned. "I know." Dong Wushang's heart was heavy. When he saw Duke Yu's earth-shattering saber, Dong Wushang felt his own insignificance from the bottom of his heart. That kind of feeling of death directly shrouded his heart made Dong Wushang's heart tremble. "From now on, I don't want to feel that kind of feeling again." Looking at Chu Yang's blood-stained hand, Dong Wushang's heart throbbed again. "From now on, I won't let my brothers bleed for me. I don't want to feel that kind of heartache again. This requires strength." Dong Wushang didn't speak again, but his eyes became deep. A firm belief quietly rose from his heart. Perhaps even Chu Yang didn't know that Duke Yu's saber had changed Dong Wushang's life's belief and pursuit. From now on, he would only pursue the peak. When he returned to the camp, he saw GMO and Luo Kadi wrestling with each other with bruises all over their faces. Dong Wushang had just experienced a life-and-death crisis. Seeing these two so mischievous at this time, he couldn't help but feel displeased. He stepped forward and kicked each of them, sending them flying. He roared, "What are you messing around for? Very interesting, isn't it? Idle? Stand up. Master Dong will spar with you too." "Motherfucker! You're crazy." GMO turned over and jumped up. "I'm your third brother." "Third brother?" Dong Wushang chuckled mischievously. He took down the dark saber that weighed 570 pounds from his shoulder and held it in his hand. Then, he said, Since that's the case, I will accompany third brother to exchange pointers. Third brother, please advise me. Ji Mo's face fell immediately. Dong Wuxiang didn't say anything else. He shouted and pulled out his saber. A mass of saber light enveloped the two of them. GMO and Luo Kadi turned pale with fright at the same time. They reacted quickly and formed an alliance to fight against Dong Wuxiang. A moment ago, they were still fighting to the death. Now, they were fighting side by side. The thickness of these two's skin made Chu Yang feel ashamed of his inferiority. Chu Yang shook his head and laughed. Suddenly, a sharp sword intent came from afar. The person hadn't arrived yet, but that kind of awe-inspiring aura had already made people feel cold all over. A faint voice said, "Why are you fighting?" Bus. The awe-inspiring sword intent suddenly turned into a spring breeze. A thin figure suddenly appeared. Gu Duxing. As soon as he saw Chu Yang, Gu Duxing rushed over in surprise. Chu Yang immediately turned around and greeted him with a smile. Both of them were inexplicably happy to see each other. Chu Yang sensitively saw that Gu Duxing's face was somewhat pale. Obviously, he was seriously injured and hadn't recovered yet. "Open your mouth," Chu Yang said. Gu Duxing didn't have time to speak. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a pill was suddenly stuffed into his mouth by Chu Yang. In an instant, a pure spiritual power surged from his dantian. His whole body felt so comfortable that he wanted to moan, "Quickly cultivate." Chu Yang patted his shoulder. Gu Duxing knew that this was a rare elixir. He didn't dare to neglect it. He immediately sat down cross-legged and started to cultivate. After an hour, the five brothers sat together. Gu Duxing's injury had actually completely recovered. "Duxing, although your injury has recovered, don't expose it for these 2 days. At the critical moment, strike." Chu Yang said. "I know. Then I'll pretend to be a patient for these 2 days." This is easy. Gu Duxing and Chu Yang had not seen each other for a long time. He was excited and spoke more. His voice was cheerful. As he spoke, he started to cultivate. His face immediately turned pale and yellow, as if he was seriously injured. He said, "Is this okay?" Luo Kadi and GMO burst out laughing at the same time. "Old Gu is really something." Gu Duxing knocked each of them on the head. "Motherfucker. If you call me Old Gu again, I'll cut you up." Everyone laughed together. "There are still 2 days. In these 2 days, I'll give you a special training," Chu Yang said slowly. "This is related to GMO's marriage. You can't be careless. Since GMO has taken a fancy to this daughter-in-law, we not only have to fight for her, we have to win beautifully. Fair and square. We can't allow any imperfections in our marriage." Chu Yang paused and said, "We can't rely on others. We brothers must do our best. Understand?" Gu Duxing, Dong Wuxiang and Luo Kadi agreed at the same time. Ji Mo's heart warmed. His eyes turned red. His lips trembled a few times. He resisted the excitement in his heart and said with a smile, "Good. When I get my daughter-in-law, I'll get all of you drunk." Ha! His voice trembled as he laughed. But the 4 of them didn't laugh at him. Gu Duxing and Dong Wuxiang, who were famous for their cold faces, gently stretched out their hands and patted Ji Mo's shoulder. "Brother, we also know. After this, Heavenly Armament Pavilion will open in 3 days. Chu Yang smiled and said, "And this time, Ao, Xie, O and Mo clans will provide us with a lot of money. Especially Mo Tianyun. He will provide the biggest help to our Heavenly Armament Pavilion." Ha ha! Everyone laughed. They were overjoyed. Thinking of Mo Tianyun's miserable appearance of losing his family fortune, these heartless guys laughed even harder. One day later, the sound of galloping cavalry rumbled outside the mountain. Looking down from the top of the mountain, one could see an extremely elite cavalry team roaring from afar like a black dragon. Every single one of them was a rare and precious horse that was hard to find. Every rider on the horse was a 1 in 10,000 expert. They were as majestic as pine trees. Their statures were tall and straight. The horses were like dragons. They were galloping horizontally and vertically. Their aura could swallow rivers and mountains. A big flag was fluttering in the wind. The flag was black. A clump of golden bamboos stood proudly in the dark. It was fluttering in the biting cold wind of empty Dingjun. The aura of a sovereign overlooking the world spread out in a rampant and arrogant manner. Cheers erupted from different directions on empty Dingjun. They went straight to the sea of clouds. Countless flags of the dark bamboo were erected in succession. One could see that the entire mountain was densely covered with flags of the dark bamboo. This momentum was truly heaven-shaking and earth-shattering, and it was extremely vast. The stream of black iron rushed into empty Dingjun. It seemed as if they had turned a blind eye to the thunderous cheers on the mountain. Jun Shizhu has arrived. Gu Du Xing stood beside Chu Yang. He was looking at the cavalry team rushing into empty Dingjun without any scruples. They were rushing all the way up. His eyes were emitting a fervent luster. Such power, such might, and such aura could swallow rivers and mountains. Such a sovereign overlooking the world should have belonged to a man. But it belonged to a woman now. The cavalry of the dark bamboo had already rushed into empty Dingjun. A long trail of smoke and dust was rushing straight into the sky from the main road behind them. It's no wonder that they can unify the underworld forces of the three heavens. Chu Yang praised from the bottom of his heart. The black cavalry team rushed onto this platform after a long time. They appeared on the platform with a rumbling sound. Then, they reined in their horses at the same time. The strong horses neighed and stood up. Then they stopped at the same time. The riders dismounted from their horses and stood straight beside their war horses. A graceful figure dressed in black slowly got down from the carriage and stood there. Her stature wasn't tall. In fact, she looked even shorter than a man. But she took a few steps forward. And an aura of disdain spread out from her body. This invisible power swept across empty Dingjun in a flash. At this moment, all the people in the mountains and plains were completely silent. This black figure slowly raised her head and insipidly said, "Everyone has been waiting for a long time." Her voice wasn't loud, but it spread throughout the entire empty Dingjun. There was no reply. Then she swept her eyes around and looked at the surrounding mountains. Suddenly, the entire mountain range felt as cold as the severe winter. The Lord of the Dark Bamboo, the leader of the underworld forces of the three heavens, Jun Shizhu. She had arrived. Chapter 454. Dong Wuxiang didn't say anything. He didn't have any special reaction to Chu Yang blocking the saber for him. But his heart was still trembling and burning. Dong Wuxiang's character was different from Chu Yang's. He was somewhat similar to Gu Duxing. Chu Yang's character was that he would definitely do what he said. He was a man of his word. He would definitely say it after he did it. Chu Yang would never bury any of his achievements. In his previous life, he had seen many people who were too embarrassed to say what they had done and were misunderstood. He had seen many people who only knew how to do things but didn't say it. Therefore, Chu Yang understood a principle. If you don't say it, how would others know what you did? If you did it but didn't say it, how would others give you recognition? This was a world of competition. And it was a competition of life and death. He couldn't be stupid. After walking for several hundred feet, Chu Yang circulated his martial energy to activate the medicinal efficacy. He rubbed his hand gently. The wound had already scabbed. Although there was still some pain, it was no longer a big problem. This fact made Dong Wuxiang widen his eyes. Chu Yang smiled and patted his shoulder with his palm. He blinked and said, "Don't worry, I have elixirs. I'm not afraid of injuries." He blinked again and said, "So you guys shouldn't be afraid either." Dong Wuxiang widened his eyes. Suddenly, he felt relieved and laughed loudly. This time, his mood was completely relaxed. Chu Yang also laughed happily. He scolded jokingly, "Damn, a saint-level sparring partner. I've really made a fortune this time. If that guy knew that I would recover so quickly, he would be depressed to death." Dong Wuxiang laughed so hard that he was out of breath. He said, "No anchor. Not bad. Ha." He laughed and laughed. Then he suddenly paused and said, "But, whether it's a sparring partner or no matter what, I'll get my revenge from Elder Yu sooner or later." Dong Wushang's voice became low and deep. "Originally, my martial arts wish was to become a saber emperor. I didn't even think about becoming a saber monarch. But after meeting you, my goal changed to become a saber monarch. But now, I only have one goal, and that is to defeat Elder Yu and get my revenge. I will never forget this slash." Dong Wushang's eyes were fixed on the bee spoon as he looked into the void and said solemnly. Chu Yang smiled and didn't say anything. From the looks of it, defeating Duke Yu would probably become Dong Wushang's long-term goal. Having such a goal was a blessing. He pondered and said, "A moment ago, we were still talking and laughing freely, drinking at the same table. The next moment, we were already facing life and death, with cold blades and cold blades. Without friendship, without feelings, without benefits, just based on one's own emotions, just a whim, you can kill." And he killed someone who could barely be considered a friend. He sighed softly. "Wu Shang, Duke Yu has taught me an incomparably profound lesson, O heir. That's 3 days of Jianghu boss." Dong Wushang stepped on the thick pine needles, making rustling sounds. He said in a deep voice, "Lower 3 heavens and upper 3 heavens are 2 completely different planes. Boss, we have to be clear about this. If there comes a day when our brothers are no longer by your side, you must never, ever, ever be soft-hearted." Chu Yang nodded silently. "Don't let Duke Yu reveal his strength." Chu Yang exhorted. "I know." Dong Wushang's heart was heavy. Seeing Duke Yu's earth-shattering saber, Dong Wushang felt his own insignificance from the bottom of his heart. That kind of feeling of death that shrouded his heart made Dong Wushang's heart tremble. "From now on, I don't want to feel that kind of feeling again." Looking at Chu Yang's blood-stained hand, Dong Wushang's heart throbbed again. "From now on, I won't let my brothers bleed for me. I don't want to feel that kind of heartache again. This requires strength." Dong Wushang didn't speak again, but his eyes became deep. A firm belief quietly rose from his heart. Perhaps even Chu Yang didn't know that Duke Yu's saber had changed Dong Wushang's lifelong belief and pursuit. From now on, he would only pursue the peak. When he returned to the camp, he saw GMO and Luo Kadi wrestling with each other with bruises all over their faces. Dong Wushang had just experienced a life and death crisis. Seeing these two so mischievous at this time, he couldn't help but feel displeased. He stepped forward and gave each of them a kick, sending them flying. He roared, "What are you messing around for? Interesting, isn't it? Idle? Stand up. Master Dong will spar with you too." "Damn it. You're crazy." GMO turned over and jumped up. "I'm your third brother." "Third brother?" Dong Wushang chuckled mischievously. He took down the dark saber that weighed 570 kilograms from his shoulder and held it in his hand. He said, "Since that's the case, I'll accompany third brother to exchange pointers." GMO's face fell immediately. Dong Wushang didn't say anything else. He shouted and pulled out his saber. A mass of saber light shrouded the two of them. GMO and Luo Kudi turned pale with fright. They reacted quickly and formed an alliance to fight against Dong Wushang. A moment ago, they were still fighting to the death. Now, they were fighting side by side. The thickness of these two's skin made Chu Yang feel ashamed of his inferiority. Chu Yang shook his head and laughed. Suddenly, a sharp sword intent came from afar. The person hadn't arrived yet, but that kind of awe-inspiring aura had already made people feel cold all over. A faint voice said, "Why are you fighting?" Bus. The awe-inspiring sword intent suddenly turned into a spring breeze. A thin figure suddenly appeared. Gu Duxing. As soon as he saw Chu Yang, Gu Duxing rushed over in surprise. Chu Yang immediately turned around and greeted him with a smile. Both of them were inexplicably happy to see each other. Chu Yang sensitively saw that Gu Duxing's face was somewhat pale. Obviously, he was really injured and hadn't recovered yet. "Open your mouth," Chu Yang said. Gu Duxing didn't have time to speak. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a pill was suddenly stuffed into his mouth by Chu Yang. In an instant, a stream of pure spiritual power gushed out from his dantian. His whole body felt so comfortable that he wanted to moan. Chu Yang patted his shoulder. Gu Duxing knew that this must be a rare elixir. He didn't dare to neglect it. He immediately sat down cross-legged and started to cultivate. After an hour, the 5 brothers sat together. Gu Duxing's injury had actually completely recovered. Duxing, although your injury has recovered, don't expose it for these 2 days. At the critical moment, strike. Chu Yang said, I know. Then I will pretend to be a patient for these 2 days. This is very easy. Gu Duxing and Chu Yang had not seen each other for a long time. He was excited and spoke more. His voice was cheerful. As he spoke, he started to cultivate. His face immediately turned pale and yellow, as if he was seriously injured. He said, Is this okay? Luo Kudi and GMO burst out laughing at the same time. Second brother Gu is really good. Gu Duxing knocked each of them on the head. Damn it. If you call me second brother again, I will cut you up. Everyone laughed together. There are still 2 days. In these 2 days, I will give you a special training. Chu Yang said slowly, This is related to GMO's marriage. You can't be careless at all. Since GMO has taken a fancy to this daughter-in-law, we will not only fight for her, but also win her beautifully. Fair and square. We can't allow any imperfections in our marriage. Chu Yang paused and said, Others can't be relied on. We brothers must do our best. Understand? Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang and Luo Kadi all agreed solemnly. Ji Mo's heart warmed. His eyes turned red. His lips trembled a few times. He resisted the excitement in his heart and said with a smile, Good. When I get my daughter-in-law, I will get all of you drunk. Ha. His voice was trembling when he said the last 2 laughs. But none of the 4 laughed at him. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang, who were known for their cold faces, gently stretched out their hands and patted GMO on the shoulder. Brother, you understand. We also understand. After this, Heavenly Armament Pavilion will also open in 3 days. Chu Yang revealed a smile and said, And this time, Ao, Xie, O and Mo clans will provide us with a lot of money. Especially Mo Tianyun. He will provide the biggest help to Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Ha ha. Everyone laughed. They were overjoyed. Thinking of Mo Tianyun's miserable appearance when he lost his family fortune, this group of unscrupulous people laughed even harder. 1 day later, the sound of galloping cavalry rumbled outside the mountain. Looking down from the top of the mountain, one could see an extremely elite cavalry team roaring from afar like a black dragon. Every single one of them was a rare and precious horse that was hard to find. Every rider on the horse was a 1 in 10,000 expert. They were as majestic as pine trees on the horses. Their figures were tall and straight. The horses were like dragons galloping horizontally and vertically. Their aura could swallow the rivers and mountains. The flag in the front was fluttering in the wind. The flag was black in color. A clump of golden bamboos stood tall and proud in the darkness. It fluttered in the biting cold wind of Timidingjun. The aura of a sovereign overlooking the world spread out in a rampant and arrogant manner. Cheers erupted from different directions on Mt. Dingjun. They went straight to the sea of clouds. Countless flags of the dark bamboo were erected in succession. One could see that the entire mountain was densely packed with flags of the dark bamboo as far as the eye could see. This momentum was truly heaven-shaking and earth-shattering, and it was extremely vast. The black stream of iron rushed into Mt. Dingjun without moving. It seemed as if they had turned a blind eye to the thunderous cheers of the people on the mountain. Jun Shizhu has arrived. Gu Duxing stood beside Chu Yang. He was looking at the cavalrymen rushing into Mt. Dingjun without any scruples. They were rushing all the way up. His eyes were emitting a fervent luster. This kind of power, this kind of might, and this kind of aura of a sovereign overlooking the world should belong to a man. But it now belonged to a woman. The cavalrymen of the dark bamboo had already rushed into Mt. Dingjun. A long trail of smoke and dust was rushing straight into the sky from the main road behind them. It's no wonder that they can unify the underworld forces of the three heavens. Chu Yang praised from the bottom of his heart. The black cavalrymen rushed onto the platform after a long time. They appeared on the platform with a rumbling sound. They then reined in their horses. The strong horses neighed and stood up. Then they stopped at the same time. The cavalrymen dismounted from their horses and stood straight beside their war horses. A graceful figure dressed in black slowly came down from the carriage and stood there. Her stature wasn't tall. In fact, she looked even shorter than a man. But she took a few steps forward, and an aura of disdain spread out from her body. An invisible power swept across empty Dingjun in a flash. At this moment, all the people in the mountains and plains were completely silent. This black figure slowly raised her head and insipidly said, "You've been waiting for a long time." Her voice wasn't loud, but it spread throughout the entire empty Dingjun. There was no reply. Then she swept her eyes around and looked at the surrounding mountains. Suddenly, the entire mountain range felt as cold as the severe winter. The Lord of the Dark Bamboo, the leader of the underworld forces of the three heavens, Jun Shiju. But even more, he was completely exhausted, begging for votes. To be continued. Chapter 455. Thank you for your hard work, Minister Jun. Thousands of people on MT Dingjun roared at the same time. Everyone mobilized their spiritual power. And they shook the entire MT Dingjun and raised the dust. It covered the sky. Jun Shiju looked around and smiled. Her demeanor was reserved. She kept people at a distance and didn't speak again. Hundreds of knights formed two columns with a schwa sound and protected Jun Shiju. Then, they walked towards Duke Yu's location in an orderly manner. Jun Shiju's arrival signaled that this war was about to begin. All the major clans had sent important people to discuss this matter. Moreover, they wanted to see Jun Shiju's attitude. Only one person looked in the direction of Jun Shiju's troops with a complicated expression on his face. He didn't speak for a long time. This person's clothes were as white as snow. His face was like jade. His demeanor was graceful and calm. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He was tall, and his hair was as black as ink. It was fluttering in the air. He held a purple jade flute in his hand, and it was emitting sparkling and translucent rays of light. Emotianji. Emotianji had been burning with anxiety after he had received Jun Shiju's extortion order. He had immediately gathered 10 million in banknotes and had rushed over overnight to wait for Jun Shiju. He had arrived several days ago. But he hadn't shown up. It was because he didn't want to meet Emo Tianyun. The two of them had the same mother. But they didn't like each other. Emo Tianyun wanted to pull out Emo Tianji's tendons and skin him whenever he saw him. And Emo Tianji felt both depressed and disgusted when he saw Emo Tianyun. Emo Tianji's plan was only a petty trick in Emo Tianyun's eyes. Moreover, it wasn't elegant. Emo Tianyun's plot was like a child's play in the mud in Emo Tianji's eyes. It was stupid, stupid, and stupid. Such a combination of three Bs made people feel disgusted at first sight. The two brothers had been harmonious on the surface a few years ago. But they had slowly developed into fighting and scheming against each other. Then, it had gradually evolved into a turbulent undercurrent. Then, it had advanced into an open and covert struggle. After that, it had slowly become irreconcilable hatred. However, he had no choice but to look for Emo Tianyun now. Emo Tianji's white clothes fluttered in the wind. His calm and gentle face. Emo Tianyun's bodyguard hurriedly went in to report, "Young master, second young master has arrived." Second young master? Emo Tianji? Emo Tianyun snorted and said, "Let him in." Emo Tianji had already arrived outside the door before he finished speaking. He elegantly said, "I'm here." Emo Tianyun, are you ready? Now that they were not in the house, both of them tore off their unnecessary masks of hypocrisy, calling him by his name. Emo Tianyun coldly snorted. With a gloomy face, he walked out and stood at the door. He casually said, Emoton Yun. As a younger brother of the Mo clan, don't you know how to greet the future clan head? Future patriarch? Mo Tianji sneered. Then he impatiently said, Are you ready? Once you're ready, hurry up and bring Xiao Wu back. I'm not interested, and I don't have the time to talk nonsense with you. Emoton Yun snorted and said, Of course I will save my little sister. I don't need you to rush me. The experts of the Mo clan had heard the news and rushed over. More and more people came. Mo Tianyun's words naturally became sanctimonious. Mo Tianji wished he could use his big foot to ruthlessly kick this handsome face in front of him. This bastard will die if he doesn't pretend to be righteous. Hurry up. Mo Tianji gently smiled. Lan Mei is still waiting outside. Hearing Lan Mei, Mo Tianyun's face immediately darkened. During this time, his lover and child were tightly controlled by Mo Tianji. If Mo Tianyun wanted to visit, he had to get Mo Tianji's permission. Every time Lan Mei went out on a mission, she would take Mo Tianji's poison before going out. She would be given the antidote when she came back. But this thing didn't make him feel comfortable. Who could stand his woman being tightly controlled by someone else? Even though they were blood brothers. But Mo Tianji was still a man. Mo Tianyun thought of Lan Mei and Mo Tianji every day. It was as if he had eaten a fly. He wanted to vomit blood whenever he thought of it, but there was nothing he could do. The two brothers came out side by side. One was gentle and elegant, and the other had a face full of spring breeze. It seemed that they were a pair of good brothers. Little did they know that the two of them were secretly grinding their teeth. Second brother, Xiao Wu will be engaged once she is redeemed. Ha, you also know the person. It's Meng Luo of the Meng clan. Mo Tianyun sighed and said, Meng Luo practices an evil technique. But he is from a big clan. So he won't treat Xiao Wu unfairly. Mo Tianji's complexion turned pale. But it immediately returned to normal. He smiled and said, Big brother is right. I heard that elder sister Lan Mei can dance very well. So, I will certainly appreciate Lan Mei's public dance to celebrate Xiao Wu's engagement. Then, all the men in the Zhonglan battlefront will be blessed. Ha ha, Mo Tianyun angrily said, You. He naturally knew that the public dance that Mo Tianyun was talking about was definitely a naked dance, or a striptease. And, all the men in the Zhonglan battlefront will be blessed, was extremely vicious. Mo Tianji smiled and said, Big brother, you don't need to worry. Who would dare to bully us in the Mo clan? A few days ago, there was a reckless green-haired tortoise who dared to spout nonsense to me. I was so angry that I turned his 3-year-old son into a eunuch. Speaking of which, I was a little cruel. I feel very guilty. I will turn your woman into a prostitute and your son into a eunuch if you dare to deal with Xiao Wu. How could Mo Tianyun not understand the meaning behind these words? Mo Tianyun was so angry that his hands and feet turned cold. He felt as if he was suffocating. He almost fainted on the spot. A king-level expert of the Mo clan behind him said in a mocking tone, Second young master is too soft-hearted. What's there to feel guilty about turning a child into a eunuch? You must know that a real man cannot stand firm if his heart is not ruthless. A great man must be ruthless. This guy was on Mo Tianyun's side. Naturally, he would not be polite to Mo Tianji. However, he did not know the inside story. So, his words were somewhat awkward. What do you think, Cheng Feng? Mo Tianji modestly asked. I can't do anything to that person at the moment. But that green-haired tortoise is still in my hands. Cheng Feng, if you have any good ideas, you can teach me a few moves. Isn't that easy? Mo Cheng Feng laughed with contempt. He assumed a teaching posture and said, First of all, you can't let this little guy die. He won't be worth anything if he dies. But you can make him shed a layer of skin every day. Good idea. Mo Tianji praised. And then, there are many ways to mess with him. It would be best to train this little bastard into a human-shaped dog. But you must let the person who offended you see this. That is, this little bastard's father. Well, it would be best to take his son out for a walk every time you see him. Then, you can immediately restrain him. Mo Ching-feng was not a malicious person. Each of his ideas was more vicious than the last. In addition, after training him, you can hold an auction. Nowadays, some rich people like to play with this kind of child. Haha, during the auction, you can also bring that green-haired tortoise into the bidding. But you can't let him win. What a brilliant idea. What a brilliant plan. Wonderful. Mo Tianji clapped his hands and praised. He laughed and said, "That's very reasonable. I have decided. If that cuckold dares to offend me again, I will deal with his son like this." Mo Tianyun's breathing became heavy. His face had almost turned into the color of a pig's liver. "By the way, Ching-feng, that bastard's wife is also in my hands." Ha! Mo Tianji lowered his voice. But he deliberately let Mo Tianyun hear him. "That's even simpler." Mo Ching-feng slapped his thigh. "With a woman in my hands, I can play with that bastard to death." Before he finished speaking, Mo Tianyun could not bear it anymore. He ruthlessly slapped Mo Ching-feng's face. Then he roared fiercely, "You bastard! What are you talking about? You are too presumptuous." Mo Ching-feng touched his face and was stunned. In an instant, his heart was at a loss. He was angry and aggrieved. Tears almost flowed out of his eyes. "Fuck, this is unreasonable. Fuck, I am helping you vent your anger and humiliate the second young master. Why did you hit me? What did I do wrong? My devotion was all for your sake, ah. Eldest young master." Mo Ching-feng looked at Mo Tianyun with an aggrieved expression. He felt so aggrieved that tears were rolling down his cheeks. "You have wronged me." Mo Tianyun was so angry that he couldn't vent his anger. So, he kicked him again. Second brother, he is still young. And you are instilling these things in him, these things. You are simply devoid of conscience." The experts of the Mo clan were dumbfounded as they looked at Mo Tianyun. They were so surprised that it seemed as if they had discovered an alien. "Fuck, what's going on? Heartless? Second young master is still young? When did the eldest young master become so protective of his brothers? Moreover, isn't this the eldest young master's specialty? He used to be exultant when he talked about it. Moreover, Mo Ching-feng was basically taught by him. How come he has become a righteous gentleman now? So pure? But who would dare to ask Mo Tianyun when they saw his angry face? Mo Tianyun vented his anger. Then he walked to Mo Tianji's side. He chuckled and said, "Second brother, you don't need to listen to this nonsense. Let's go and bring Xiaowu back. No matter how big the matter is, it's not as important as your sister who's related by blood." Mo Tianji put on a fake smile and said, "Elder brother, you are right." Therefore, the two brothers respectfully walked forward. Jun Shizhu arrived at Dukyu's place. She saw that Dukyu was treating the wounds on his arms. They had almost healed. However, she could still see that his arms had been pierced through. His arms had been pierced through by someone. And there were 20 holes in them. Jun Shizhu was shocked. Who can injure Dukyu like this in 3 days? To be able to beat Dukyu to such a state, taking his life would be as easy as flipping a hand. Chapter 456. Jun Shizhu's complexion sank. She then asked in a dignified manner, "Which old bastard came down?" Dukyu's expression was very strange. It seemed as if he was somewhat confused and perplexed. He didn't answer the question. Instead, he asked in a serious manner, "Shizhu, do you think that there is such a kind of sworn brother in this world?" Jun Shizhu was startled. She thought for a while and said, "I can't say that there isn't such a thing. But I haven't seen it in reality." Dukyu nodded. He then said in a silent manner, "But I've seen it." He sighed. "So, there really is such a thing." Human nature was the most despicable thing. Dukyu had never believed in feelings, especially when he encountered a so-called sworn brother in life and death situations. He would beat them until they were at the end of their rope. Then he would put forward a condition: only one of them could survive. Duke Yu would coldly observe the ugly human nature of these two people whenever he saw them killing each other. And he would toy with the so-called friendship to his heart's content. He would mercilessly whip and ridicule their so-called friendship. Then he would finally kill them. He had done such a thing more than once. No one had ever had the courage to exchange their own life for the life of their sworn brother in front of Duke Yu. That was because they believed that a person like Duke Yu would never sympathize with them. In fact, he wouldn't cherish heroes and honor heroes. However, Chu Yang had used his own flesh and blood to block a blade for Dong Wuxiang just a day ago. Dong Wuxiang had also sacrificed his own life for Chu Yang. Could it be that Dong Wuxiang didn't know that I could crush him to death with just one finger? He must have known. But why? This matter had subverted Duke Yu's thoughts. Human nature is despicable. Everyone in the world can be killed. Jun Shizhu didn't answer. She merely snorted and said, "Who hurt you?" "Don't ask about this matter." Duke Yu insipidly said, "It's not as serious as you think." Jun Shizhu nodded and said, "It's fine as long as you know." She knew that no one would be able to ask Duke Yu anything as long as he didn't want to say it. Asking him would be in vain. While they were talking, Jun Lulu and Emo Qingwu also walked in. Emo Qingwu had changed into a red dress, looking smart and adorable. Her delicate body, which had just begun to grow, was like a slender and elegant orchid that was about to bloom into a flower bud. Her small face was bright, and her fine black hair flowed down her head smoothly. A delicate butterfly made of red cloud steel spread its wings above her head, ready to take flight. Her eyes were black and white, and her long eyelashes were like a dream. Her expression was innocent with a hint of intelligence, and her pointed chin had a hint of stubbornness. "Where is Big Brother Chu Yang? Is he in this mountain?" Emo Qingwu impatiently pouted and asked. She looked at Jun Lulu with pleading eyes. She had a delicate and pitiful look on her face. "Chu Yang?" Duke Yu subconsciously said, "I just fought with him." Emo Qingwu's small mouth opened slightly. She immediately became anxious. "Is he injured?" Duke Yu's spirit was shaken. He rolled his eyes and said, "What does it matter if he's injured or not? Can't I just beat him up?" Emo Qingwu glared at him. She pouted and looked at Duke Yu fiercely. "Why did you beat my big brother Chu Yang?" Duke Yu scratched his head and looked at Jun Lulu. "Where did this little girl come from? Did you bring this little girl to teach me a lesson?" Jun Lulu couldn't help but chuckle and said, "She's King of Hell Chu's darling. You can say that you beat King of Hell Chu in front of anyone but her." "Did you really beat him up?" Emo Qingwu glared at Duke Yu. Her eyes had turned somewhat red. "Did you beat him up in pain?" Duke Yu immediately raised his hands in surrender when he saw Emo Qingwu's clear eyes. "I didn't beat him up. Instead, he beat me up. You look at me, you look at me. I'm so pitiful." Duke Yu stretched out his arm to let this little girl see the injury on his arm. He wanted to gain some sympathy. He knew that Jun Shizhu wasn't an outsider since she had brought her here. So, he treated her as if she was a child. Emo Qingwu heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She said, "You obviously can't beat him up." "But..." She rolled her eyes and said, "I can't do anything if he beats you up." She jumped to Jun Lulu's side as she said this. Then, she hugged her arm and gently shook it. She said, "Elder sister Ah Lu, lend me your mirror." Duke Yu's forehead was filled with black lines. "I can't beat him up, but he should beat me up? Is there such a theory in this world?" At this moment, a report came in from outside. "Minister Jun, Minister Yu, representatives of major clans have come to pay a visit." Jun Shizhu thought for a while and said, "Little Yu, you go and receive them. Just say a few words and let them go." Duke Yu nodded and rushed out as if he was escaping. He was somewhat scared of this little girl who had suddenly arrived. "So, there's someone in this world who can be more unreasonable than me. Moreover, it's a little girl." The representatives of major clans left after a short while. Duke Yu didn't return. It was unknown where he had run off to. "Is Minister Jun here?" Emo Tian Yun and Emo Tianji of the Emo clan have come to pay a visit. Emo Tianji's voice resounded from outside. Emo Qingwu's entire body trembled. Her complexion turned deathly pale. "Second brother, do you really want to redeem me and let me marry that scoundrel?" Mo Qingwu had misunderstood again. Mo Tianji had come to redeem Mo Qingwu this time. But it wasn't to give her to Meng Luo. Mo Tianji had made a big fuss with his clan after he had come to know about Mo Qingwu's matter. Then, he had proposed to take his little sister to his place so that he could take care of her. But he had been reprimanded by Great Elder Mo Wu Exin. So, he had come here with the determination to take Mo Qingwu away. Jun Shiju looked at Mo Qingwu with pity and said, "You too, go and sit behind the screen first." Jun Lu complied, and walked over with Mo Qingwu. The two of them had just sat down when they heard Jun Shiju's deep voice from outside. "Let them roll in." The sound of footsteps was heard after a short while. Then, two people said in unison, "Greetings, Minister Jun." Jun Shiju was sitting on an armchair. She snorted and said, "Have you brought the silver?" Mo Tianji asked in a deep voice, "Is my little sister safe?" Jun Shiju coldly said, "Don't you trust the credibility of Dark Bamboo?" Mo Tianji gently said, "Dark Bamboo's name shakes the world. So, I naturally trust it. But this kidnapping is too outrageous. May I ask Minister Jun what's the cause of this matter?" Jun Shiju coldly said, "Mo Tianji, I want the silver. I don't want your nonsense. Take out the silver if you have it. And get lost if you don't. Don't show off your eloquence in front of me." Mo Tianji was silent for a moment. Then he said, "The banknotes are here since that's the case." Mo Tianyun had given him the banknotes. So, he took them out. Mo Tianyun became even more jealous in his heart. He had always been conceited that he was on par with Mo Tianji. In fact, he was even better than him. However, Mo Tianji was speaking frankly and with assurance in front of Jun Shiju today. In fact, he could even question her. But he was intimidated by Jun Shiju's fame and power. So, he couldn't speak. He was afraid that his voice would tremble if he spoke. However, he didn't know that Mo Tianji's heart was beating like a drum in the face of Jun Shiju's deliberate coercion. But he was worried about his little sister. Moreover, he was filled with indignation. So, he remained calm and collected. "Golden Hand." Jun Shiju coldly shouted, "Your subordinate is here." A person appeared in the tent with a schwa sound. "Hua Quo, come and check the banknotes." Jun Shiju insipidly said, "See if there's any mistake." Mo Tianji wrinkled his brows. "Jun Shiju wants to play tricks? Are you kidding me? Who in the world would dare to give you fake banknotes? Would I make a mistake in front of you? I don't want to court death." Golden Hand Hua Quo was a thin middle-aged man. His hands were dry and steady. He took the banknotes worth 10 million taels. Then he wiped his saliva with his finger. Then he started to count them one by one in front of Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji stared at him attentively as he counted the banknotes. His heart suddenly jumped. "This isn't right." Minister Jun, Golden Hand Hua Quo said in a puzzled manner, 10 million taels of banknotes? This is clearly 20 million taels of banknotes with 40 sheets of white paper. This is too much. Who did this? 40 sheets of white paper? Jun Shiju's complexion sank. Is that so? Wait a minute. Mo Tianji shouted. He had already counted the banknotes before he came here. 10 million taels of banknotes wasn't a small amount. How could they turn into white paper here? That guy must have done something. But his movements are so slow. How did he do it? I didn't even see it. Can I take a look? Mo Tianji asked. Golden Hand Hua Quo didn't seem to understand. He nodded foolishly and said, "Okay." Then he handed the banknotes back. Mo Tianji took them, and his heart sank. It feels different. He turned them over a little, and saw that they were all white paper. He couldn't help but feel dizzy. What's going on? Jun Shiju frowned and asked. Mo Tianyun angrily said, "What's the meaning of this?" Minister Jun, even a thief has a code of conduct. Blackmail shouldn't be done like this. He couldn't stay calm. After all, he was a pauper at the moment. He didn't have any money. He wouldn't be able to get even a single cent if the bet wasn't over. He would lose face if Jun Shizhu blackmailed him. Jun Shizhu's phoenix-like eyes turned cold. She narrowed her eyes and coldly said, "Blackmail you? So what?" Mo Tianji looked on with cold eyes. He saw that Jun Shizhu's limpid eyes had begun to emit a murderous aura. He couldn't help but shiver in his heart. He knew that the opposite party had blackmailed him for 40 million taels. So, he hastily said, "It must be little brother's negligence. I remember that I had some white papers in my bosom. I must have mixed them. Please forgive me, Minister Jun. I will make up for it." Jun Shizhu meaningfully looked at Mo Tianji. Then, she faintly smiled. "Is that so?" She couldn't help but say in her heart, "This Mo Tianji is worthy of the title Master of Calculation and Manipulation. He has seen through my intention to deal with them. I don't really want the 40 million taels of banknotes." However, she saw Mo Tianji take out the banknotes. He then said with a smile, "I will give you the banknotes one by one this time. Don't count them wrong." Jun Shizhu smiled and said, "All right, take them." Mo Tianyun finally felt relieved. He said, "I'll have to trouble Minister Jun. Please ask my little sister to come out. Minister Jun is very busy. We won't disturb you any longer. We will take my little sister back. Thank you very much for taking care of her during this time." Mo Tianji had paid the banknotes. So, Mo Tianyun naturally had to come out and play the good guy. Jun Shizhu frowned and said, "What? Mo Tianyun, are you sure? When did I say that you can take her away after paying the banknotes?" Chapter 457. Mo Tianyun stared blankly. He scratched his head and asked, "What is the meaning of this, Minister Jun?" He thought, "What kind of rule is this if you don't release her after paying the money?" Jun Shizhu coldly said, "Didn't you read the letter clearly? And now you are looking for me to release her? What a joke." Mo Tianyun and Mo Tianji were stunned. Both of them took out the extortion letter from their bosoms and read it again. Then, they looked at each other in dismay. "There's no problem." "Read it out," Jun Shizhu said. "The daughter of Mo clan, Jianghu, is currently in dark bamboo hands. Quickly pay 10 million silver taels. Otherwise, the hostage will be killed." Mo Tianyun read it out in a puzzled manner. He frowned, but didn't find any problem. Mo Tianji's eyes flashed, and he immediately realized that this was bad. Jun Shizhu sneered and said, "I only said that I wouldn't kill the hostage as long as you pay the money. When did I say that I would hand her over to you? Don't tell me that your sister can eat my food, drink my water, wear my clothes, use my things, and live in my place without paying money?" Mo Tianyun was flabbergasted. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. "These 10 million silver taels are only for your sister's food expenses." Jun Shizhu insipidly said, "Please go back if you don't have anything else to say. Of course, you're welcome to stay here if you want to. You only need to pay 10 million silver taels for food expenses." Behind the curtain, Jun Lulu tightly covered her mouth to prevent herself from laughing out loud. "I didn't expect that my elder sister had such an idea. It's a brilliant plan." Mo Tianyun stood outside the door. He angrily asked, "Why did you pull me out?" "You can still go in," Mo Tianji said, "as long as you can come up with 10 million silver taels." Mo Tianyun snorted and said, "Then, why did you give her 40 million silver taels? That's clearly extortion. I said that you're stupid. But, you're stupid to this extent." Mo Tianji looked at him with contempt and said, "Jun Shizhu is looking for trouble. Can't you see that? You and I would have been out of luck if we hadn't paid the money. That 10 million silver taels is extortion. That 40 million taels are to buy our safety. You can't even see this point. What right do you have to be the Mo clan's young clan lord?" Mo Tianyun became furious. "You." Mo Tianyun shook his head and said, "You do your thing. I won't stop you if you want to go back and look for Jun Shizhu. I have something to do. I need to find someone." He didn't wait for Mo Tianyun's reply. He simply turned around and left. Mo Tianyun spat out a mouthful of saliva and touched his pocket. Right now, his pockets were really empty. He could not help but clench his teeth. Then, he bitterly muttered to himself, "Let's see if you, Ji, can still be arrogant in front of me after I win that billion." He sneered and left as well. Little did he know that at this moment, Tianji was also cursing in his heart. This bastard is actually gambling with his clan's property. If he loses, then you, Tianyun, are nothing. Not even comparable to a dog's fart. Chu Yang was with Gu Du Xing, what happened to your injuries? Chu Yang asked. Tianyun did it. Gu Du Xing casually said, I heard about this matter. So, I went to look for Tianyun to settle the score. But, I ended up being besieged by him and a large number of experts. I killed a few of them and got a little injured. Gu Du Xing said it casually, but how could Chu Yang not hear the danger hidden in this light voice? Gu Du Xing probably escaped from death. What exactly happened? Is it worth you taking such a big risk? Chu Yang frowned. Gu Du Xing looked at him in shock. Don't you know? Chu Yang was taken aback. What do I know? Gu Du Xing was furious. What's wrong with GMO and the rest? How could they hide such a big matter from you until now? Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He said, about Qing Wu? Gu Du Xing let out a long howl. GMO, the few of you, get your asses over here. In an instant, Dong Wushang and the rest came over. Gu Du Xing's eyes widened. He said angrily, why didn't anyone tell boss about little Wu? GMO scratched his head and widened his eyes. What, didn't boss already know? Chu Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. When did I know? Luo Kadi, Dong Wushang, and GMO looked at each other in dismay. Then they sighed at the same time. We saw that you dealt with Meng Luo as soon as you arrived. And you put the Meng clan in a difficult situation. Then, you dealt with Tianyun in the gambling house. We thought that you knew. How come you still don't know? Dong Wushang and Luo Kudi's faces darkened. This was a big problem. Chu Yang frowned. I dealt with Meng Luo because you wanted to snatch his storm leopard. And I dealt with Tianyun because he didn't treat little Wu well. What does this have to do with Qing Wu? Chu Yang wanted to inquire about Qing Wu's whereabouts as soon as he arrived here. But he thought that everyone was busy with Ji Mo's marriage. Everyone was under pressure. Moreover, Qing Wu was still very young. So, she shouldn't have any big problems in the Mo clan. So, he thought that he would go and fetch Qing Wu after he had dealt with this matter with GMO. Did something happen to little Wu? Tianyun and Meng Luo were very close some time ago. They must have talked about little Wu's matter. And they encouraged Meng Luo to propose marriage to the Mo clan on the basis of the alliance between the two clans, Gu Du Xing slowly said. Propose marriage? Chu Yang stood up with a sh sound. He angrily said, are Meng Luo and Tianyun courting death? He recalled that Meng Luo practiced an evil technique. It's so vicious that they want to harm Qing Wu. Suddenly, a murderous aura burst out from his body. It couldn't be contained. Even Gu Du Xing and Dong Wushang felt cold all over. And Meng Luo followed the good advice. He immediately proposed marriage to the Mo clan. He wanted to take Qing Wu as his concubine. And the great elder of the Mo clan, Mo Wuxia, made the final decision after some discussion. He agreed to this marriage. Gu Du Xing said everything in one breath. Chu Yang was so angry that his hair stood up. He clenched his teeth so hard that they made grinding sounds. His body was also trembling. Concubine? Meng Luo. I, Chu Yang, announce that you bastard have won the big prize. I heard about this matter at that time. So, I immediately went to look for Tianji. But, Tianji had already gone deep into the Zhonglan continent by that time. So, I turned back and went to look for Tianyun, and fought with him. Gu Du Xing's eyes exposed a cold ray of light as he said, but, big brother, you're here now. So, you should make the decision. You don't need to have any misgivings. We'll do whatever you say. Dong Wushang and the other two said in unison, that's right. Little Wu is only 11 years old. The Mo clan is obviously devoid of conscience. Big brother, don't worry. We'll do whatever you say. Pumph. It seems that I was too lenient. Chu Yang was extremely regretful. Motherfucker. How could I have let that bastard Meng Luo go back alive if I had known about this earlier? Someone rushed in from outside. An Imperial Guard reported, "Second young master, there's a matter." Dong Wushang, GMO, and Luo Kadi turned around at the same time. Which second young master did you call? The Imperial Guard's forehead was full of sweat. Second young master Dong, the second young master of the Mo clan, Mo Tianji, has come to pay a visit. He said that he has an important matter to discuss with you. Chu Yang's eyes turned cold as he said, "Let him come here. I'm looking for him to settle the account." The Imperial Guard didn't dare to stay any longer when he saw that the faces of these masters had turned as cold as frost. He rolled and crawled and immediately rushed back. Someone hurriedly came in after a short while. He said from afar, "Dong Wushang, is Chu Yang here?" It was Mo Tianji. And the person he was looking for was Chu Yang. Mo Tianji had already known that Chu Yang had arrived in the three heavens. But he felt that he didn't have the face to see Chu Yang. "I couldn't even protect my little sister. She had given me a peerless treasured saber, but my own clan had snatched it away. This is such a shameful thing. How can I explain this to Chu Yang?" He recalled how Chu Yang had earnestly entrusted him with a task when they had parted in the past. He had solemnly vowed to protect Chu Yang, but he hadn't done anything yet. So, how could he not feel ashamed? Therefore, he had immediately hidden away in shame when he had found out that Chu Yang had arrived at Mt Dingjun. In fact, he didn't even have the nerve to participate in such a lively gambling event. He couldn't wait to hide from Chu Yang. But Jun Shiju's matter had been exposed. So, Mo Tianji had to thicken his skin and look for Chu Yang even if he was embarrassed. After all, he had heard that Chu Yang and Duke Wei were friends. Moreover, Duke Wei had taken the initiative to act as a notary for the gambling event between Chu Yang and his elder brother. Therefore, he had immediately come to look for Chu Yang. Retrieving Mo Qing Wu would be a piece of cake as long as Chu Yang was willing to ask Duke Wei to act on his behalf. It must be said that Mo Tianji's brain worked exceptionally fast. Mo Tianji had arrived at the right time. He had arrived just in time for Chu Yang's outburst of anger. So, he had hit the jackpot. "Chu Yang, you're here." Mo Tianji was pleasantly surprised. "I've come to ask you for a favor." "You still have the nerve to ask me for a favor?" Chu Yang looked at him furiously. "Mo Tianji, you can't even protect your little sister. You let her be bullied and humiliated. And you've come to ask me for a favor? Are you joking with me?" Mo Tianji's face turned red. He stammered, "I've come to discuss with you." Chu Yang coldly said, "What do you want to discuss with me?" Mo Tianji was helpless. So, he humbly apologized. His handsome face had turned red. "I only want an explanation." Chu Yang angrily said, "What happened to little Wu? What do you plan to do? What kind of shameful thing has your Mo clan done?" "I've come to discuss this matter with you." Mo Tianji helplessly said, "It seems that only you can act on this matter." "Act on my behalf? Do I have so much faith in your Mo clan?" Chu Yang was surprised. Little Wu has run away from home. But she has fallen into the hands of Jun Shiju, the Lord of Dark Bamboo. She's currently being detained. And she's doing her best to torment our Mo clan. Mo Tianji anxiously said, "I've heard that you're very familiar with Duke Wei?" Chu Yang immediately became vigilant. "First, tell me clearly." Mo Tianji then narrated the matter from when Mo Qing Wu had run away from home until now. He bitterly sighed and said, "I now understand that Jun Shiju didn't kidnap Mo Qing Wu. She probably doesn't find our Mo clan pleasing to the eye. So, she's deliberately tormenting us. I wouldn't have had any objection if this matter didn't involve little Wu. But the problem is that the little house is with her." Chu Yang frowned and said, "What do you plan to do with little Wu if she gets out? Send her back to the clan?" "Sending her back to the clan is impossible." Mo Tianji resolutely and decisively said, "I will take her far away." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.